Chapter 1442. Then, Long Yu started to imprint the mysterious patterns of the worldly, pure body in his mind. Originally, it would take him 2 days to inscribe the 7th mysterious pattern, but now it only took him 4 hours, which was about 10 times faster. It was all because he had completely comprehended the revelation level 90U divine text. In the next 2 days, he had completely imprinted the remaining 7 mysterious patterns into his mind. From now on, the effects of his pure world physique had increased by 6 times, and his resistance against mental attacks and control methods had once again increased to a higher level. As for the 8th layer, if he wanted to inscribe any one of them, he would need 20 hours. Basically, he would need to inscribe 1 per day. Long Yu calculated that if he wanted to finish inscribing the 8th layer, he would need another 22 days. If he wanted to finish inscribing all the 9th layer, he would need another 120 days, which was about 4 months. By then, the academic year of the Demigod College would be over. However, the improvement was not very significant for Long Yu. After all, Long Yu could already reflect most of the mental attacks and control methods with the world-cleansing soul mirror. Improving his resistance in this aspect was not very meaningful. In other words, if Long Yu continued to inscribe these mysterious patterns, his combat ability would not increase significantly, but it would take a lot of time. Therefore, it was not necessary. It's a pity that I can't go to the 2nd floor of the 9 Hell Monument before I finish inscribing the mysterious patterns of the worldly pure body. Otherwise, I could just go in and see what's there. I think it should be the mysterious pattern of the devil dust heart. Long Yu thought to himself and shook his head. If he had the time, he might as well complete some training missions in the Demigod College. If he focused on completing the missions, he could earn a lot of battlefield military merits in a month. Most importantly, he could train himself in real battles, improve his combat ability, and familiarize himself with all kinds of opponents. After joining the Demigod College, the practical experience of fighting against alien races was something that no one else could get. It was the most valuable treasure that they could obtain. Having seen the fighting styles of countless alien races, the students of the demigods were suitable to fight any opponent in any situation. Ever since Long Yu joined the Demigod College, he hadn't had many battles with aliens. He had only dealt with 2 aliens during the 2 missions with Moon Song and Red Oriole, one of which was the Abyss clan that he had seen before. So, next, he was ready to complete the missions of the demigods. Battling celestial body can only be improved in battle. This martial skill has yet to reach the level of the transformative realm. I wonder what kind of tyrannical effect it will have when it reaches the transformative realm. Long Yu thought in his heart. He was looking forward to it. In order to cooperate with the Berserker celestial body, he planned to see if there were any special pills for sale that could improve his compatibility with the Berserker symbol in a certain place every time he accepted a mission from the Demigod College. Such pills weren't rare. It was just that the Demigod College didn't have them at the moment. So, if Long Yu went out to try his luck, it was very likely that he could get 1 or 2. If he could improve his compatibility with the Berserker symbol, his strength could be greatly improved. Right now, his most important move was the Berserker celestial body. After all, it was an unbounded level high-grade martial skill. Although it could only be used with the Berserker fist cannon, it couldn't explode with power that was several times stronger than the other unbounded level martial skills. However, it had the effect of endlessly stacking the Berserker celestial body, which was something that other unbounded level martial skills couldn't compare to. It could be said that each had its own advantages. As long as Long Yu could survive the battle, this martial skill would have unlimited possibilities. Fighting Mad Celestial Body could refine a cultivator's fleshly body and increase the strength of the cultivator's fleshly body. Long Yu's current fleshly body was at least as strong as a 5th stage ruler. Adding on the Devil Dust Heart's effect of reconstructing his fleshly body, it allowed him to stand firm in battle. Because of this, the Berserker Celestial Body was undoubtedly Long Yu's strongest move. It complemented his other moves and allowed him to defeat many opponents that he originally couldn't defeat. This was practically impossible for cultivators at the level of a great ruler. My goal for the next half a year is to become a 3rd rank dominator, and I have to be strong enough to deal with an ordinary 7th rank dominator. Long Yu set such a goal for himself. Right now, he could deal with ordinary 5th rank dominators without much of a problem. So, when he became a 3rd rank dominator, dealing with ordinary 7th rank dominators shouldn't be a problem. However, he was only talking about ordinary 7th rank dominators. If it was the guys from the Demigod Institute, Long Yu wouldn't be able to fight against them unless he reached the 5th rank dominator level. Generally speaking, the higher the martial realm of the geniuses in the Demigod Institute, the longer they stayed in the Demigod Institute, the more terrifying their corresponding moves would be, and the stronger their ability to cross levels would be. The good news was that after drinking so much divine wine, Long Yu unexpectedly discovered that his understanding of the ancient god forbidden technique, the 4 symbols death prison, had increased a lot. Although he could still only use the death lines to entangle and corrode his opponents, the corrosive power and killing power of the death lines had doubled. The doubling of power was nothing compared to the improvements in other aspects of Long Yu, but this allowed Long Yu to see the dawn of understanding the ancient god forbidden technique, the 4 symbols death prison. Right now, he didn't know to what level the Geo-Dragon Emperor had comprehended the ancient god forbidden technique, but he was sure that the other party hadn't comprehended it to the peak. Therefore, it should be relatively easy for Long Yu to comprehend the 4 symbols death prison to the level that the Geo-Dragon Emperor had comprehended before. Of course, the difficulty was still very high, and one could see it now. Previously, Long Yu had drunk 7 bottles of divine wine, which was equivalent to cultivating for nearly 5 years. He had even completely comprehended the Revelation level 9 Nether Divine text, but his understanding of the ancient god forbidden technique had only increased by a little. If one needed to reach 100 points to completely comprehend the ancient god forbidden technique, the 4 symbols death prison, then the Geo-Dragon Emperor might have only comprehended 50 points, and the original Long Yu had only comprehended 1 point. Now, Long Yu's understanding of the 4 symbols death prison had increased from 1 point to 2 points. This change could be said to be a doubling of the change, but in fact, it didn't increase the progress of his comprehension by much. If 7 bottles of divine wine could only allow him to comprehend 1% more of the 4 symbols death prison, he would need at least 700 bottles of divine wine to comprehend it to the same level as the Geo-Dragon Emperor. This calculation made Long Yu a little puzzled. With so much divine wine, even if he was given all of the Demigod College's divine wine every year, it would still take him at least 20 years to collect all of it. Moreover, how could he take all of the Demigod College's divine wine? Moreover, the reason why Long Yu could comprehend the 4 symbols death prison in this way was because he could transform into the Geo-Dragon Emperor through the Book of Shadows, which gave him a special feeling about the 4 symbols death prison. It was this feeling that allowed him to gradually comprehend the 4 symbols death prison during the time when he was in a daze after drinking the divine wine. In any case, my cultivation has temporarily come to an end. I can probably go out and accept some strength missions from the Demigod Colleges. Thinking to himself, Long Yu finally left his room and went out to inform Moonsong and Red Oriole. He was going to meet them in the mission hall and choose some suitable missions to do. Moonsong and Red Oriole didn't have much to do at the moment. They were both cultivating the 2 high-grade, unbounded martial skills. Moonsong was currently in the 4th phase Sovereign Realm. She had cultivated the 9 firmaments Star Flash. When she appeared in front of Long Yu again, she had already cultivated the technique to the peak. Moonsong had definitely put in a lot of effort to go from small success to great success, and then to the peak. It was about the same for Red Oriole. However, she had been cultivating the secret martial arts technique, balance control, for a period of time before her return, so she hadn't been cultivating the Demon Shadow Bind for long. However, she had already cultivated it to the Greater Mastery realm. Whether it was the peak or the Great Success realm, the 2 high-grade, unbounded martial skills could be used in actual combat. They would definitely produce some miraculous effects. As for Red Oriole, her cultivation realm was that of a third-stage sovereign. She was still a distance away from reaching the fourth-stage sovereign realm. After all, at the sovereign realm, it was much more difficult for her to expand her minor cosmos and increase her cultivation base than before. Just look at Long Yu. If he wanted to go from the first phase sovereign to the second phase, he would need at least 10 times the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. This was why it was so difficult for a cultivator to advance after reaching the sovereign realm. The three of them regrouped in a mission hall and split up to choose their missions. This time, they wanted to accept a mission with a difficulty around the fifth phase sovereign realm. They should be able to complete it with ease. First, they would practice and familiarize themselves with their teamwork. After that, they could take on some of the more difficult missions. Without a doubt, Moonsong and Red Oriole were already very familiar with each other's teamwork. However, Long Yu hadn't really fought alongside them. The only 2 times he had fought alongside them had ended in a very short period of time. This mission isn't bad. Fight against the soul race. Long Yu, you seem to be very good at dealing with them. Why don't you give it a try? Red Oriole's voice came from the other side of the hall, calling for Long Yu and Moonsong to go take a look. The soul race was an alien race that didn't have a fixed form. They were extremely adept at mental attacks. Long Yu was no stranger to them. Chapter 1443. It could be said that Long Yu had a deep impression of the Soul Clan. This was because when he first came to the Great World from the Small World and entered the Demon Clan's territory, one of the 2 alien races he had challenged in the bloody battlefield was from the Soul Clan. As for the other one, it was a warrior of the Abyss Clan, a foreign race with extremely strong physical strength. The foreign races that came from the Abyss of the Starry Sky didn't have their own great worlds. Long Yu had dealt with the Abyss Clan twice, so he had some experience. As for the Soul Race, Long Yu had previously relied on the worldly purity body to kill one in the bloody battlefield. However, the scene at that time still left a lingering fear in his heart. After all, the Soul Race did not have a physical body, and mental attacks were impossible to guard against. It was extremely difficult to deal with them without absolute confidence. On the battlefield of the foreign races, if a Soul Race Legion appeared, it would be handed over to a special demon race member. This special demon race member was also extremely adept at mental attacks. They were the most suitable to stop the Soul Race's attacks, and there had been no mistakes over the years. However, even the demon race, who were most adept at mental attacks, had to make many sacrifices to stop the Soul Race. It was just that ordinary people did not know about these sacrifices. Deal with the Soul Race. Long Yu was somewhat surprised. He had not expected Red Oriole to choose such a training mission for him. If he had to deal with the Soul Race, Long Yu would be the one with the most combat power among the 3. After all, Long Yu had already cultivated the world-purifying body martial technique. Now, he had imprinted so many mysterious patterns in his mind, increasing the effect of the world-purifying body by 6 times. Most importantly, he had cultivated the world-purifying body to the peak of the 9th level and could use the world-purifying soul mirror. Against ordinary opponents, such as the Abyss race, they might not necessarily use mental attacks. Therefore, the world-purifying soul mirror was not needed. However, to the Soul Race, the world-purifying soul mirror could be said to be their natural enemy. It might even reflect the opponent to death. It had to be known that the world-purifying soul mirror was a terrifying technique that could reflect mental attacks 10 times the power. In that case, let's let the Soul Race experience a nightmare. Long Yu narrowed his eyes and nodded at Red Oriole, indicating that she had accepted the training mission. Since the Spiritas were a special race, the mission Jade Slip had already stated that the opponent was a Spiritas, so they didn't need to open it to know. This was why Red Oriole hadn't accepted the mission yet when she called Long Yu and Moonsong over. Now that she got Long Yu's approval, she took down the Jade Slip for the mission. The mission's difficulty indicator is that 5 5th phase great rulers will need to work together to complete it. It doesn't seem appropriate for us to rashly accept it. Red Oriole chuckled. What's the point of saying it after you've already accepted the mission? However, we have Long Yu. I want to see just how powerful the worldly purification physique is. Moonsong covered her mouth and giggled. She wasn't worried that they wouldn't be able to complete the mission. After all, it was only a 5th phase Great Ruler training mission. The difficulty wasn't that high. In addition, the 3 of them had Long Yu, who specialized in restraining the Spiritas. Even if this mission was dangerous, they should be able to overcome it in the end. In reality, dealing with the soul race was the most dangerous. This was because this race was invisible and their attacks were impossible to guard against. If the soul race wanted to hide, it would be several times more difficult to find them than finding other hidden races. However, Long Yu wasn't worried because Red Oriole was here. Balance control had already reached the peak of the 9th layer, and she could also buff herself with balanced light. Simply put, it wasn't too difficult to find Spiritas that were at the 5th phase Great Ruler level. After the 3 accepted the mission, they didn't hesitate and immediately set off. Many people in the mission hall saw that Long Yu and the other 2 had actually accepted the Spiritas mission and couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. They were all choosing training missions in the hall. Of course, they saw this mission marked with the Spiritas. The rewards of this training mission were twice as much as other missions of the same difficulty, but not many people were willing to accept it. This was because the Spiritas weren't something ordinary cultivators could deal with. Without special methods, even if they encountered Spiritas with lower cultivation in them, it would be a huge problem if they could deal with them. It was the same for the students of the demigod academies. Not everyone was proficient in mind attacks and control methods. Many times, they felt that the Spiritas were simply abnormal, a species that shouldn't exist in this world at all. This race was completely made up of mind energy. It was invisible and formless. If one didn't have strong special methods, it would be extremely difficult to deal with them. They might even be killed unknowingly. Once one fell into the mind attack array set up by the Spiritas, it would be very difficult to escape no matter how high one's martial realm was. This was because the other party's attack was not aimed at the cultivator's physical body, but the cultivator's mind and soul. How bold! These 3 newbies actually dare to find trouble with the Spiritas. Isn't that Long Yu? I heard that he has some enmity with the Golden Flood Dragon demons. When he was in the demon territory, he once killed the Spiritas in a bloody battlefield. I heard that too. There aren't many people who can kill the Spiritas, especially those who can be captured alive from the battlefield. They're even more difficult to deal with. Everyone was discussing. It seemed that they knew a lot about Long Yu's deeds. After all, Long Yu had become a celebrity in the entire Demigod Academy ever since he entered. Of course, there would be people who specially investigated him. Everyone was looking forward to Long Yu and the other 2 returning in defeat. However, the reality naturally wouldn't let them get what they wanted. In a certain silent void, Long Yu, Red Oriole, and Moonsong appeared in this part of the void. They could not sense the existence of any other galaxies around them. It seemed that this place was relatively remote. Apparently, 5 Spiritas experts were hiding in this part of the star field. Those 5 5th stage Great Ruler Realm Spiritas should be setting up some kind of array in this area. This array had been set up for a few months, but it was far from complete. Previously, when the experts of the Demigod Academy discovered the signs of this array, they issued it as a training mission. It was just that in the past month, no one was willing to accept this mission. After all, the Spiritas were too special. It was very possible for accidents to happen when dealing with them. Now that Long Yu and the other 2 had accepted this mission, some of the higher-ups of the Demigod Academy heaved a sigh of relief. They were really afraid that no one would dare to accept this mission. Wouldn't the reputation of the Demigod Academy be ruined? One had to know that this mission should have been handed over to some special department in the battlefield army. However, the higher-ups of the Demigod Academy wanted to train the students, so they took it on. If no one accepted this mission, it could be said that it would indeed be very embarrassing. Because of this, many higher-ups now looked at Long Yu and the other 2 in a new light. These 3 could be said to be new students, but they were actually more courageous than the old students. Of course, they had investigated Long Yu, and knew that Long Yu had killed the Spiritas before. However, at that time, the Spiritas he killed were trapped in the arena and had nowhere to run. Now, they were going to encounter those Spiritas in the void. The most powerful thing about the Spiritas was actually not their mental attacks, but escape. Because the Spiritas did not have a fixed body, they were all life forms condensed from mental power. If they wanted to hide and escape, they could cultivate many kinds of martial arts secret techniques, such as mental decomposition. They could disintegrate themselves into countless mental bodies and scatter them in the void without a trace. Then, they would gather again in a safe place. This kind of magical ability gave the Spiritas a unique advantage when fighting in the void. Ordinary people would not be able to find them and kill them at all. This was not a problem for Long Yu's team. If they wanted to track their opponents, Red Oriole's methods could be said to be top-notch. Whether it was her spiritual sense perception or deduction ability, she could be said to be at the peak of the entire demon race. Even the strength of the spiritual sense perception and deduction ability of many 7th phase Dominator demon race experts were far inferior to Red Oriole. Because she cultivated the martial arts secret technique, balance control, with the addition of the balanced light, Red Oriole's spiritual sense perception ability was 100 times stronger than cultivators of the same realm. Is it to stop the 5 5th phase Dominator soul race experts from completing this spirit array? Long Yu thought to himself. He did not take action immediately. Instead, he looked around and released the Heaven Fire Doyen from the small world. Rascal, why are you looking for me? The Heaven Fire Doyen was waiting impatiently. He had wanted to quickly follow Long Yu to that faction to see the situation, but he did not expect Long Yu to wait until the end of the academic year at the Demigod College before returning. It really made him feel suffocated. Now that Long Yu had found him, he naturally did not have a good expression. Senior, can you sense if there is any powerful spirit array aura nearby? Long Yu was not angry. He smiled faintly and asked the Heaven Fire Doyen. After all, the Heaven Fire Doyen had done a lot of research on spirit arrays. Therefore, it should not be a problem for him to identify the spirit array here. After all, in the mission Jade Slip, the other party did not write down what spirit array the Spiritas were setting up. To be on the safe side, Long Yu had to completely understand the situation. When the Heaven Fire Doyen heard Long Yu's words, he did not continue to be unhappy. This matter related to spirit arrays piqued his interest. Therefore, he quickly began to sense the surrounding power. There's really a spirit array that is about to take shape nearby. This is a spirit teleportation array. The Heaven Fire Doyen sensed the surrounding power aura and could not help but feel puzzled. A spirit teleportation array. Who would set up such a spirit array? It is completely useless. Chapter 1444. Mental Energy Teleportation Array. When Long Yu heard the name of this spirit array, he had a rough idea of what it was. It must be known that the soul race was a life form formed from the condensation of soul force. This soul force transmission array was useless to the human race, the demon race, and even other alien races. However, it was different for the soul race. If humans or demons used this mental energy teleportation array, only their mental energy soul would be teleported away, but their physical bodies would remain in place. Under such circumstances, most cultivators would die immediately. Separating one's soul from one's body was an extremely dangerous thing for a cultivator. Normally, no one would do such a stupid thing, not to mention build a teleportation formation using spiritual energy. Just as Heaven Fire Doyen had said, this formation was completely useless. However, this was only for humans, demons, or other alien races with physical bodies. For the soul race, which was formed from mental energy, this was their standard teleportation array. Since this was a mental energy teleportation array, Long Yu could guess its purpose. Without waiting for Heaven Fire Doyen to continue looking for other information, Long Yu wrapped Heaven Fire Doyen in his world power and wanted to send him back. However, at this moment, Heaven Fire Doyen wasn't willing to return. Instead, his face was filled with excitement as he resisted Long Yu's world power. Little brat, don't panic. This spirit design is interesting. I have never seen it before. Let me take a look. What's there to see? Isn't it just an array that the soul race built here? Long Yu waved his hand. Senior, you should hurry back. Let us destroy this array formation and kill those soul race's foreign clansmen on the way. With just you? To Long Yu's surprise, Heaven Fire Doyen sneered. I believe you have the ability to kill the soul race. However, it is impossible for the three of you to destroy this mental energy teleportation array. Red Oriole, take a look at what the mission Jade slip says. Long Yu's expression changed as he asked Red Oriole. They had just received the mission and were teleported over. They didn't really pay attention to what the mission objective was. All they knew was that they had to kill 5 fifth-phase soul race dominators first. There seemed to be more after that, but they didn't notice. Red Oriole nodded when she heard this. She took out the training Jade slip and glanced at its contents. Then, her expression changed slightly as she said, So, apart from dealing with the 5 fifth-phase soul race sovereigns, I also have to destroy this formation. It's specially marked, and I can't use other people's hands. They're really going to destroy the formation. Long Yu was a little surprised and asked, This mission seems to be very difficult. What about the rewards? Very generous. A total of 24 million battlefield army merits. Surprised, Red Oriole said, I already knew about that. The tripling merit reward was stated on the experiential Jade slip. However, it is no wonder no one has accepted such a good mission. It turns out that we have to destroy that magic array. The difficulty is truly high. We don't know anything about formations, Moonsong said with a bitter smile. Moonsong smiled bitterly. If they could not destroy this array, they would not be able to complete this training mission even if they killed the 5 soul tribe members. They would not be able to obtain any battlefield merit. Why are you looking at me? Heaven Fire Doyen noticed that Long Yu and the other two were looking at him at this moment. He couldn't help but sneer. This old man can tell you that even this old man has never seen this mental energy transmission array before. So if I want to successfully crack it, this old man will have to study it for a while. I'll leave those soul race beings to you. If you want me to help you destroy the formation, protect me well. Don't let those disgusting things disturb me. Even Heaven Fire Doyen needed to study it for a while before he knew if there was a solution. This made Long Yu feel somewhat puzzled. However, there was nothing he could do at this stage. He was the only one who had accepted this task. Additionally, Doyen Heaven Fire could also call for help. If someone else had accepted this task, it was likely that it would be impossible for them to complete it. We can't rely on others to destroy this formation. When the time comes, Senior can just tell us what to do. Long Yu said to Heaven Fire Doyen, Let's see how it goes. No matter what, let this old man observe this array first. As for how to break it, there should be a few options when the time comes. You guys kill off the surrounding soul race first, and this old man will observe for a while before deciding. After Heaven Fire Doyen finished speaking, he flew towards the void not too far away. This situation stunned Long Yu and the other two. This old fellow was actually flying towards the Dharma array. Wasn't he afraid that a soul race powerhouse would suddenly appear and stop him? Although this old fellow was a 7th-stage ruler expert, it would still be troublesome to face a 5th-stage ruler from the soul race, right? Let's go. Let's go and kill the soul race beings first. Those 5 soul race beings shouldn't be in the same place at the beginning. This is good news. We don't have to face 5 soul race beings at the same time. Long Yu smiled. Then he got Red Oriole and Moon Song to hide in his 9 underworld tablets small world. Because the soul race beings were formless and had no form, he couldn't openly step into the range of the other party's formation. He had to turn into nothingness and approach quietly. As for how to discover the other party, it was up to Red Oriole. After entering Long Yu's 9 underworld tablets small world, Red Oriole immediately activated her deduction power. The endless deduction power constantly followed the aura on the Jade slip and spread out in all directions. Soon, it locked onto the aura of the 5 soul race beings. These 5 soul race beings didn't expect that someone would suddenly disturb them while they were quietly setting up the formation. They were all alarmed. Then they realized that there was actually an old man from the human race walking towards the center of the spirit formation that they had constructed. It seemed like he wanted to study the spirit formation. This made the 5 soul race beings furious. This was a teleportation formation that they had spent a lot of effort and months to build. It could teleport soul race beings over super long distances. How could it be seen through by a human? Without any hesitation, the 5 members of the soul race did not move. Instead, they released even more members of the soul race from their respective small worlds. These members of the soul race rushed towards Elder Heaven Fire in an attempt to kill him. There was no need for Red Oriole to investigate this situation. Even Long, you could sense it. Countless spiritual beings in the surroundings were constantly approaching the Heaven Fire Doyen. The strength of these beings was definitely not at the level of a 5th rank ruler. In fact, many of them were only at the level of a high rank ruler or a middle rank ruler. Occasionally, there were a few 1st rank rulers and 2nd rank rulers. This made Long Yu's heart tremble. He knew very well that these soul race beings were most likely released by the 5 5th rank rulers from the soul race's small worlds. If it was any other foreign race, there was no need to be afraid of these weaker beings in the small worlds. However, Long Yu had neglected one point. This was the soul race. Even if those little things of the soul race had weak cultivations, they were still life forms of the soul race. As a member of the soul race, they had the special attack methods of the soul race. If it wasn't for a cultivator who also had special methods to deal with them, even a 7th phase great ruler could be killed by these little things. These soul race beings were high-rank rulers and 1st rank rulers. Their cultivation levels weren't high, but they were proficient in spiritual attacks. If they were caught unprepared, even a human super expert might fall for their attacks. Furthermore, the soul race beings that appeared around the Heaven Fire Doyen were densely packed. It seemed like in 15 minutes, the Heaven Fire Doyen would be surrounded by 1,000 soul race beings. If so many soul race beings attacked at the same time, even the Heaven Fire Doyen might not be able to withstand it. Of course, the Heaven Fire Doyen was a top artificer of the human race. His spiritual power was definitely very strong. However, no matter how strong he was, could he be stronger than the combined attacks of 1,000 soul race beings? Help! Long Yu made a decision immediately. However, he didn't release Moon's Song and Red Oriole because the 2 women wouldn't be of much use in this situation. Long Yu could only rely on himself now. He cultivated the Pure World Body and had the Pure World Soul Mirror to reflect spiritual attacks. However, if the opponent's target wasn't him, he wouldn't be able to reflect their power. Therefore, he had to think of other spiritual attacks to deal with these soul race beings. He didn't think too much because he knew that the 4 symbols Death Prison possessed destructive power on a spiritual level. Primordial Shadow. With a single thought, Long Yu instantly condensed hundreds of desolate ancient shadows and flew out. He couldn't be bothered to dodge and just appear in the void just like that. With so many desolate ancient shadows appearing at the same time, they surrounded Doyen Heaven Fire in the middle and protected him. Soon, the Heaven Fire Doyen began to study the spiritual power teleportation array leisurely under the protection of Long Yu's primordial shadows. As for the primordial shadows of Long Yu, they each executed the ancient God-forbidden technique, the 4 symbols Death Prison. Countless lines of death bloomed in the endless void. These lines of death constantly intertwined in the void. Even though they couldn't accurately entangle every soul race being, these soul race beings couldn't withstand the power of death and were easily corroded by the power of death. The power of the 4 symbols Death Prison had doubled. Even if it was still as powerful as before, it wouldn't be a problem to kill these soul race beings. Once the 2 moves, the primordial shadow and the 4 symbols Death Prison were executed, the siege of the 1,000 soul race beings was instantly disintegrated. None of the soul race beings could stop the killing of the 4 symbols Death Prison. Chapter 1445. As Long Yu's primordial afterimages continued to execute the ancient God-forbidden technique, the four symbols death prison, countless lines of death danced in the void. Small soul race beings were constantly being locked down by these lines of death, entangled, and corroded by the death chi. There was no need to talk about the soul race beings that hadn't reached the Great Ruler realm. Even the first and second stage Great Rulers were corroded by the death chi of the four symbols death prison without any ability to struggle. Although these soul race beings were life forms formed from mental energy, the four symbols death prison didn't only target the physical body. In fact, the four symbols death prison's destruction of mental energy was even more fatal. Death had always been targeted at spiritual power or the soul. Take Long Yu, for example. Even if his physical body was completely destroyed, as long as his devil dust heart remained, the devil dust heart would be able to store his soul. Then, using the devil dust heart as a secret technique, it would be able to reconstruct a new physical body. Therefore, the four symbols death prison was an ancient God-forbidden technique. Its destructive power mainly targeted mental energy and the soul. Now that it was facing these small soul race beings, there was no doubt that it was extremely lethal. The consumption is too great. Very quickly, Long Yu broke out in cold sweat. This was because he discovered that condensing the desolate ancient afterimages to cast the four symbols death prison consumed too much of his energy. Basically, every time 100 desolate ancient afterimages used the four symbols death prison, he would need to consume an ancient grade medicinal pill to recover his energy. Otherwise, his energy would be completely exhausted after using it twice. At that time, it wouldn't be easy for him to execute any other techniques. Against the special mental energy life forms of the soul race, the wild-fighting celestial body martial technique was useless. If he wanted to deal with the soul race, he had to use a special technique. There were so many soul race beings present. In an instant, over 300 of them were killed by Long Yu. Some of the stronger second stage Great Rulers weren't immediately killed by the four symbols death prison. However, when the four symbols death prison was executed a second time, the death chi enveloped them once more. They still had no chance of resisting. As if they had realized that Long Yu was a huge threat, those little soul race creatures actually gave up on the Heaven Fire Doyen under the command of the 5/5 phase soul race sovereigns. Instead, they charged towards Long Yu. Long Yu wasn't afraid of this. His mental attacks weren't particularly strong, but his resistance against mental attacks was extremely strong. The pure world body, in addition to the 7 layers and 154 mysterious patterns that were imprinted in his mind, increased the effects of the pure world body by 6 times. This allowed Long Yu's mental attacks and control techniques to surpass others. Long Yu's resistance against mental attacks and control techniques. He had probably reached the 7th stage Great Dominator rank. Long Yu didn't make any movements. He didn't care about those small soul race beings that were targeting him. Instead, he turned and rushed towards one of the 5th stage Great Rulers. He wasn't afraid of being targeted by the soul race beings. He was afraid that those small soul beings would target the Heaven Fire Doyen. After all, he could tell with a glance that the Heaven Fire Doyen wanted to study the mental energy teleportation array. This old man's temper was indeed a little strange. At this moment, in the Heaven Fire Doyen's eyes, there was nothing else besides the mental energy teleportation array. Even though he wasn't afraid of these small soul beings, he couldn't be bothered with them. He didn't even want to make a move. Instead, he handed them over to Long Yu. On one hand, this was because he trusted Long Yu. On the other hand, it was because he was too obsessed with the mental energy teleportation array. He didn't want to waste any time dealing with the soul race beings. Soon, Long Yu approached the first 5th stage Great Ruler soul race being. There were over 600 small soul beings chasing after him. Along the way, they were being chased by the primordial afterimages that Long Yu had created. Long Yu consumed one ancient medicinal pill after another, but he couldn't keep up with the consumption. Fortunately, these soul race beings weren't very strong. Long Yu easily dealt with them with the 4 symbols death prison. Red Oriole and Moon Song, who were in Long Yu's small world, couldn't help but admire Long Yu's posture. To be honest, there weren't many people in the Demigod Academy who could deal with the Soul Race experts so easily. Moonsong and Red Oriole definitely couldn't deal with so many Soul Race beings. If the other party attacked them once, they would probably have a mental breakdown. On the other hand, Long Yu was being chased by so many people from the Soul Race. Those people from a Soul Race were constantly attacking Long Yu with their mental attacks. In this part of the void, the mental attacks had nearly filled up the entire space. However, the mental attacks that the Soul Race beings launched at Long Yu didn't affect Long Yu at all. Long Yu's world-purifying physique appeared on the surface of his body. It was as if he was immune to all poisons. When the mental attacks landed on Long Yu's body, they were all blocked by the world-purifying physique. He didn't activate the world-purifying soul mirror at this time. Although he could use the world-cleansing soul mirror to reflect the majority of those Soul Race little things to death, Long Yu was very clear in his heart that his greatest enemy wasn't those Soul Race little things, but the 5/5 phase Dominator ranked Soul Race experts. The world-purifying soul mirror was the trump card that Long Yu used to deal with the 5/5 phase Soul Race experts. At the very least, he had to use this move to deal with 2 Soul Race experts. If he exposed it now, he wouldn't be able to achieve the effect of surprise later. It was very likely that the other party would be prepared, and it wouldn't be effective. Long Yu kept approaching one of the 5th phase Soul Race experts. The Soul Race little things chasing after him became fewer and fewer. Gradually, they were all killed by Long Yu. It looked very easy, but in reality, Long Yu's head was covered in cold sweat. In this short period of time, Long Yu had already consumed 12 ancient-grade medicinal pills. If converted to army contribution points, it would be worth hundreds of thousands of battle merit points. The consumption rate was still very shocking. However, compared to the rewards that could be obtained after completing this training mission, this consumption was within an acceptable range. When Long Yu thought about the 24 million mission reward, he was very tempted. If the 3 of them divided, it would be 8 million battlefield merit points, which could be used to buy nearly 2/3 grade Heaven Crystal rank creation items. Long Yu still needed creation items. On one hand, he needed more creation items to increase his Martial Dao realm. On the other hand, his Devil Dust Heart Martial Dao secret technique would soon reach the 6th level. From the 6th level onward, Martial Dao secret techniques needed to absorb creation power to increase their level. Therefore, Long Yu needed a large amount of creation items from now on. Of course, the more battlefield merit points he had, the better. He had many ways to earn battlefield merit points, but from the looks of it, completing these training missions was the most efficient. As long as he found the right way and method, it wasn't difficult to earn battlefield merit points. Without any hesitation, when Long Yu approached the 5th phase Soul Race expert, he raised his hand and used the 4 symbols Death Prison. Countless death lines swept towards the Soul Race expert. That soul expert was invisible and had no physical form. However, it was possible to sense its location by relying on one's spiritual sense. The lines of death quickly gathered towards its location. Originally, that Soul Race expert was still constructing the mental energy transmission array. It thought that with so many Soul Race little things released from the small world, it would be able to kill Long Yu and the Heaven Fire Doyen. However, it didn't expect that this human brat, Long Yu, would be so powerful. He created so many clones and killed all the Soul Race juniors that came out of the small world. This was unexpected. From the looks of it, the fellow sent by the human race was definitely not an idiot. He was a special expert that specialized in dealing with the Soul Race. That Soul Race expert roughly thought of this. Right now, it couldn't spare any strength to deal with Long Yu. This was because this mental energy transmission array required 5 Soul Race experts to construct at the same time. If one Soul Race expert didn't pour in strength, the speed at which the mental energy transmission array was constructed would nearly come to a halt. They didn't need to personally deal with a mere first phase Soul Race brat. As for the human old man in the middle, he was the true enemy for these Soul Race experts. Of course, The attention of the 5 soul race experts had already been attracted by Long Yu. Soul race juniors constantly flew out of their small worlds and attacked Long Yu. The death lines released by Long Yu were blocked by several third-stage, Great Sovereign Realm juniors of the soul race. They were unable to land on the body of the 5th-stage Great Sovereign Realm soul race expert. It can't be that to kill these 5 soul race experts, I have to kill all the soul race juniors in their small worlds, right? Long Yu thought to himself. He was quite puzzled. No wonder this mission was so difficult and the rewards were so high. It turned out that the difficulty of this mission wasn't something ordinary people could imagine. How many soul race juniors could there be in the small worlds of these 5 5th-phase soul race experts? They were specially sent out to complete the mission and construct the mental energy transmission array. It was impossible for them to come alone. In their small worlds, there were many soul race juniors. In an ordinary person's small world, there wouldn't be a ruler's secret realm existence. The strongest would be at the emperor's level. However, in the 5 soul race experts' small worlds, a large portion of the soul race juniors were rulers' secret realm existences. There were even several third-phase soul race experts. A third-phase soul race expert was already 2 levels higher than Long Yu. Even if Long Yu used the ancient god's forbidden technique, 4 symbols death prison, to kill a third-phase soul race expert, he would need to use his full strength. He couldn't relax at all. The problem was that Long Yu wasn't surrounded by just one third-phase Great Dominator rank soul race soul. This left Long Yu with no choice but to release 3 third-phase soul race experts from the Dragon Bone Tower. The moment these darkness creatures appeared, they blocked Long Yu's path and blocked the other soul race experts. Long Yu was facing a third-phase soul race expert alone. Chapter 1446. For Long Yu, if it was any other third-stage dominator, he would have been able to kill them easily. After all, he was a first-stage dominator, and he had completely mastered the 9 Nether Divine script. He was at least 10 times stronger than the last time he was in the outside world. However, Long Yu did not dare to relax in the face of these invisible and formless soul race experts. That was because mental energy was a domain that was rarely researched by the human race. Even the strongest human race mental energy expert could not compare to 1/10 of the soul race in terms of mental energy. It was impossible to predict what kind of strange methods the other party would use. Long Yu maintained his vigilance from start to finish. When he faced a third-phase soul race individual, he raised his hand, and countless death lines shot out, instantly enveloping the third-phase soul race individual. The aura of death began to corrode it. However, the rank 3 Dominator didn't die just like that. It directly launched a mental attack at Long Yu. It didn't resist the aura of death's corrosion at all. It seemed to know that it couldn't withstand such a powerful attack. The rank 3 Dominator rank soul expert's attack landed on Long Yu's body. Originally, Long Yu didn't pay much attention to it. After all, he had the world-purifying body, which could resist mental attacks. However, he quickly discovered that the soul race expert in front of him, who was at the third-phase Great Ruler Realm, had an extremely strong mental attack. Even the barrier formed by the pure world body was pierced by a sharp mental attack. It instantly stabbed into Long Yu's body. Long Yu felt a tremor run through his entire body. However, nothing else happened after that. After all, he had the world purity physique to defend against it. Even though the opponent's attack had entered Long Yu's body, it was unable to cause too much damage to him. With the pure world body's defense, the mental attack that landed on Long Yu's body was at most 10% of its original power. This bit of mental power couldn't do much to Long Yu. At most, it made his mind feel some discomfort and pressure. After all, the pure world body's effect was too terrifying. The mysterious patterned shadow wrapped around Long Yu's body, constantly reducing the mental attack's effect on him. This situation caused a rank 3 Dominator rank soul race expert to die with grievances. The lines of death completely surrounded him, and the aura of death invaded his mental power, bringing death to the soul race expert. If he could easily take care of one, would the others be far behind? Long Yu immediately launched a massacre against the Spiritas that were constantly encircling him. For Long Yu, there was no pressure in dealing with these juniors of the soul race. The most important reason was that he had cultivated the pure world body. His resistance to mental attacks was simply too strong. Without sufficient cultivation, the soul race could not pose any threat to Long Yu. At the very least, a rank 3 Dominator rank soul race expert couldn't harm Long Yu. With the pure world body's defensive ability, it didn't matter how many opponents there were. In the end, they couldn't harm Long Yu's soul. Killing the soul race juniors that surrounded him was just a matter of time and energy consumption for Long Yu. Long Yu was getting excited from killing, but he discovered that the soul race juniors around him didn't decrease. Instead, their numbers were increasing. This caused Long Yu to frown. Up until now, he had consumed 16 ancient medicinal pills to recover his strength. Even if he didn't care about the resources and wealth these medicinal pills represented, the problem was that he didn't have many recovery medicinal pills on him. Taking everything into account, Long Yu still had over 40 ancient medicinal pills on him. These medicinal pills were bought when he was free, and some were refined by Liao Lele for him. He hadn't used them up until now. After all, this kind of situation rarely happened in the past. Countless soul race experts surged towards him. This made Long Yu feel a little lucky. If these soul race experts were from other foreign races, such as the powerful Yuan race, Long Yu definitely wouldn't be able to resist them. Unfortunately, these foreign races were all soul race experts. The strongest martial art that Long Yu cultivated was the pure world body. Mysterious patterns danced around him, blocking all mental attacks on Long Yu. Even a rank 3 Dominator rank soul race expert's attack couldn't break through the protection of these mysterious patterns and land on Long Yu's body. Occasionally, there would be an extremely powerful spiritual shockwave that would eventually penetrate the barrier of the pure world body and corrode into Long Yu's body. However, the spiritual energy would be weakened by at least 10 times and would not pose much of a threat to Long Yu. However, the strongest soul race expert here is a rank 3 Dominator rank soul race expert. If the rank 5 Dominator rank soul race expert attacks, it's hard to say if I can still resist. Long Yu seemed to have the upper hand and had already annihilated a large group of over 1,000 soul race juniors. However, in reality, he was still not confident that he would be able to win this battle. After all, he didn't know how many soul race juniors were in the opponent's small world. Generally speaking, there weren't any Dominator rank secret realm juniors in a small world. The soul race experts that the opponent had released were clearly members of their army. The first soul race expert that Long Yu was facing was most likely a commander of the Emperor army. He had probably brought all his army members into the small world. Most of them were Emperor soldiers, so they wouldn't be able to affect Long Yu at all. A small portion of them were rank 3 Dominators. They were already considered experts, but there weren't many of them. If he hadn't guessed wrongly, the number of soul race members in this Emperor Lord Legion had probably reached 10,000. This terrifying number caused Long Yu to tremble in fear. Even someone as strong as him couldn't fight against an entire soul race legion by himself. Now, only 1,000 or so soul race experts had appeared. Long Yu was already as tired as a dog. Even if these soul race experts couldn't deal with him, it would still be extremely difficult for him to kill them. The main thing was that he had to expend a lot of energy. Needless to say, Long Yu vaguely felt that something was amiss. Other than the 1,000 soul race experts that had surrounded the Heaven Fire Doyen, which had been killed by Long Yu, another 1,500 soul race experts had appeared to surround Long Yu. Long Yu had killed a few rank 3 Dominator rank captains. He had also used the Desolate Afterimage to kill another 300 to 400 soul race experts. The remaining 100 or so soul race experts that were at the rank of Ordinary Dominator Secret Realm surrounded Long Yu. Although they couldn't deal any mental damage to him, they were able to prevent him from breaking out of the encirclement. As for the other 1,000 soul race experts, they were all at the rank of Emperor. They didn't participate in the siege of Long Yu. Instead, they started to set up a mental energy offensive array. This mental energy offensive array surrounded Longyu. One could imagine that even if this mental energy offensive array was just a simple stacking of energy, the combined attack of the 1,000 soul race experts at the rank of Emperor would be enough to blast Longyu into pieces. This situation was something that Red Oriole had warned Longyu. After all, Longyu was surrounded in the middle. He didn't have the time to care about what was happening outside. When Red Oriole reminded Longyu of this situation, Longyu's heart immediately went cold. He finally understood why this group of Spiritas were so fearless. It turned out that they were preparing a powerful move. Even if they had to sacrifice some lives, they had to kill Longyu on the spot. However, this information still made Longyu feel a little more at ease. After all, the other party only had 1,000 soul race experts constructing a mental energy offensive array. This meant that the other party's small world only had this many soul race experts. Otherwise, wouldn't it be faster to send more soul race experts to construct the mental energy offensive array? At this time, Longyu felt that there was no need for the other party to hide their forces. What made Longyu even more nervous was that this 5th stage Dominator rank soul race experts Emperor army had already entangled Longyu. As for the other 4 5th stage Dominator rank soul race experts, they continued to activate many soul race small things as they prepared to rush towards Heavenfire Doyen, who was in the center. This was the most important thing for Longyu. He couldn't let Heavenfire Doyen be disturbed no matter what. Otherwise, who knew what this old man with a strange temper would do? Longyu, let me go out. I'll go out and buy some time. At this time, Moonsong said to Longyu with a solemn expression. Will it be all right? Longyu was still a little worried about Moonsong. After all, Moonsong didn't cultivate the worldly purity body like him. Her resistance to mental energy offensive was not as strong as his. If she wasn't careful, she could be besieged by the soul race experts. I'll go with her. Once a soul race expert approaches and ambushes us, I'll immediately discover him. Red Oriole nodded at this time. Then, she suggested to Longyu that she and Moonsong should go out and buy time. After all, the two women didn't have any effective methods to kill the soul race experts. The only thing they could do was buy time. You guys don't go yet. Leave some recovery pills for me. Longyu thought for a moment, then said to the two women, no matter what, he probably couldn't rely on his current strength to kill all 5 5th phase soul race experts. Therefore, if the two women had recovery pills on them, it would be best if they could give some to him. The two women each handed over some pills. Not only were there ancient rank pills, but there were also ancient rank pills. They didn't hold back much. They only left 5 pills for themselves to use at a critical moment. The rest were given to Longyu to strengthen Longyu's combat abilities. With these pills, Longyu could definitely kill more soul race experts. Then, the two women left Longyu's minor world. 9 Firmament's Star Flash. Moonsong brought Red Oriole with her and used this high-grade, unbounded martial technique. The two women's bodies instantly turned into streaks of starlight. In the next moment, they appeared next to Heavenfire Doyen. Chapter 1447. 9 Heaven's Star Flash. This ancient martial skill that had disappeared for a long time was once again used by someone. High-grade, unbounded martial skills were not common martial skills. Not to mention, 9 Heaven Star Flash was a martial skill used by the ancient human race. It had been kept by the bone race until now, which was why it had a chance to reappear in the world. Moonsong had already cultivated it to its peak. Although it was a movement martial skill, it also had some offensive capabilities. She used 9 Heaven Star Flash with Red Oriole. The two women turned into streaks of starlight and appeared next to the Heavenfire Doyen. At the same time, several ripples of starlight spread in all directions. These ripples of starlight directly imprisoned the little soul race beings on the spot. Even if they were pure mental energy life forms, they could not escape the restraints of the starlight divine characters. They all lost the ability to move. However, Moonsong and Red Oriole could do nothing to the little soul race beings. After restraining the soul race beings, Red Oriole and Moon Song tried to use other methods to deal with them. They wanted to eliminate all the little soul race beings. Unfortunately, they did not have any effective methods to eliminate the soul race beings. We can only continue to restrain them and wait for Long Yu to arrive. Moon Song and Red Oriole exchange a glance. They could see the helplessness in each other's eyes. They were clearly frustrated that they could not eliminate the soul race. Or rather, it was not that the two women could not eliminate the soul race, but they were too slow. The two women could not use the method that Long Yu used to eliminate a large number of soul race beings. In comparison, Moon Song and Red Oriole also had some mental attacks that could trap these spiritlings in illusions. Moreover, due to their high martial realms, these spiritlings would need a long time to break free from the illusions. However, these methods only had the effect of controlling an illusions. They could not kill the soul race beings. Thousands of soul races, sovereign secret realm experts were trapped 100 zhang away from the heavenly fire Doyen. Some of them were even pulled into an illusion and were unable to free themselves. In a short period of time, they were unable to pose any threat to the heavenly fire Doyen. Seeing this, Long Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Since the heaven fire Doyen was fine, he could focus on dealing with the situation in front of him. He had no other choice. He could only ceaselessly condense the primordial afterimages and make the primordial afterimages ceaselessly execute the slaughter hell of 4 symbols. Only then would he be able to annihilate the soul race as quickly as possible. Moreover, he would be able to annihilate them without the slightest ability to resist. As he continued to use the 4 symbols death prison, it had improved a little. Although it was not much, it was better than nothing. Lines of death danced through the void, wrapping around the soul race hegemons and sending them into a hell of death. Countless lines of death gradually formed a vast domain of death. Was this the meaning of the 4 symbols death prison? Long Yu was deep in thought. However, he could only condense the death lines now. He was still far from the true 4 symbols death prison. From the bodies of the 9 nether envoys, he could tell that the 4 symbols death prison should be formed from the Azura, death, hell, and yellow springs energies. Right now, Long Yu had only obtained the ability to condense the death lines, but it was already so tyrannical. Unfortunately, even with the divine connecting wine, if Long Yu wanted to comprehend the 4 symbols death prison to the same level as the Jiuyo Dragon Emperor, he would need a terrifying amount of 700 bottles. In a short period of time, it would be extremely difficult for him to improve the 4 symbols death prison. Long Yu's wanton slaughter of the soul race hegemons finally made the soul race hegemon not far away feel that something was wrong. If this continued, not only would they not be able to kill Long Yu, but they would also be killed by Long Yu. Since that was the case, why was it still watching from the side? Although the construction of the mental energy teleportation formation would be slightly slower, there was no other way. If any of the 5 soul race hegemons left the formation, they would have to reconstruct the formation if they wanted to continue. It would take at least a month. However, if they did not move, the soul race hegemons in their small world would be wiped out by Long Yu. They could also see that the weaklings in their small world would not be able to deal with Long Yu. The main reason was that this human brat had a layer of mental energy defensive barrier that could block all soul race hegemons below the 3rd phase hegemon rank. If they did not move, Long Yu would slaughter all the members of the soul race army. Therefore, after a brief discussion through their minds, they decided to kill Long Yu first. Furthermore, in order to avoid any future troubles, they decided to attack together. In any case, whether it was 1 or 5, the time it would take for them to reconstruct the array was the same. It was better to kill their opponent as soon as possible. Moreover, someone had already discovered their movements. Perhaps it would be very difficult to complete the formation. If worst came to worst, they would kill Long Yu, a human who posed a great threat to the soul race, and leave this place. 5th phase Great Dominator Realm Soul Race experts actually attacked Long Yu at the same time. They were invisible, and their speed was extremely fast. Long Yu pretended not to notice, but he was actually very happy in his heart. He was really afraid that they would come one by one. In that case, it would be extremely difficult for him to deal with them. Since they wanted all 5 of them to come together, it would be easy. Once the world cleansing soul mirror was used, it would be able to deal with all 5 of them at once. The 5 soul race hegemons arrived near Long Yu in the blink of an eye. They ordered the other soul race hegemons to retreat. Then, 5 different mental energy shockwaves swept towards Long Yu. One of them suddenly bloomed from the void and appeared around Long Yu's body. The tyrannical mental energy could trap Long Yu in place. His physical body could leave, but his mental energy was trapped. Another mental energy shockwave had an extremely powerful mental energy destruction ability. Once it touched Long Yu's soul, it would definitely be destroyed. He would not be able to resist it at all. There were also 3 mental energy shockwaves. They were all extremely powerful techniques, and each had a different effect. In short, the 5 mental energy shockwaves came extremely quickly. They did not give Long Yu any time to prepare. Without any warning, the 5 soul race hegemons attacked at the same time in order to finish off Long Yu in one go. However, they did not know that Long Yu had a natural advantage against the soul race hegemons. Even if they were all at the 5th hegemon realm and had extremely powerful mental energy, Long Yu's methods had exceeded their expectations. When the 5 mental energy shockwaves landed on Long Yu did not hesitate to condense the power of his world-cleansing physique to form a world-cleansing soul mirror that surrounded his entire body. When the world-cleansing soul mirror appeared, it just happened to block the 5 mental energy shockwaves. Furthermore, it reflected the 5 mental energy shockwaves back at them with 10 times the power. After using the world-cleansing soul mirror, Long Yu immediately consumed a primordial-grade elixir to replenish the energy he had consumed. Although the world-cleansing soul mirror was powerful, it consumed too much energy. In any case, he could not use it a second time in a short period of time. The 5 soul race hegemons did not expect Long Yu to have such a terrifying technique. The 5 mental energy shockwaves were reflected back 10 times, causing them to panic. Perhaps it should not be said this way. After all, the soul race was formless and had no form. They did not have arms or legs. However, after reflecting these attacks, every soul race hegemon became extremely panicked. Even if they were facing a mental energy shockwave that was 10 times stronger than their own, they could still be instantly killed. Among them, the soul race hegemon that had launched the mental energy shockwave at Long Yu could not resist at all. Even though it had condensed a mental energy defensive barrier, it was unable to withstand an attack that was 10 times stronger than its own. It was directly destroyed. The soul race hegemon whose mental energy had been destroyed was equivalent to the human race and Yao race whose physical bodies had been destroyed. All that was left on the battlefield was a small world imprint formed from mental energy, which was the small world wreckage. The soul race also had a small world wreckage. However, Long Yu did not know what it looked like, and he did not have the time to care about it. He only knew that there were only 3 soul race hegemons that had been directly destroyed by his world-cleansing soul mirror. Of the remaining 2, one was trapped by his mental energy attack and could not escape. The other was heavily injured, and its mental energy life form had lost at least 80% of its power. Being able to kill 3 was already not easy for Long Yu. It even somewhat exceeded his expectations. Originally, he felt that it would be very difficult to kill one and heavily injure the others. But now, he had actually killed 3, and the remaining ones had also lost their fighting strength. 4 symbols Death Prison. Long Yu raised his hand, and lines of death condensed without hesitation. They wrapped around the heavily injured soul race hegemon, and the aura of death continuously corroded its mental energy. After a few breaths, it was corroded to death without any suspense. The last soul race hegemon had fallen into a trap of its own making. It wanted to use a mental energy attack to trap Long Yu, but it had not expected that the world-cleansing soul mirror would reflect it. Instead, it was trapped by a mental barrier that was 10 times stronger than before. Under such circumstances, Long Yu could not use the lines of death to bind, corrode, or kill the soul race hegemon. However, he was not afraid of the soul race hegemon escaping. In any case, he had already trapped the soul race hegemon. Long Yu began to clean up the surrounding soul race hegemons. After witnessing Long Yu's strength, the soul race hegemons lost all will to fight. After all, even their legion commanders had been killed by Long Yu. Only the last one was trapped. The remaining soul race hegemons began to scatter in all directions. Chapter 1448. Long Yu didn't hesitate to chase after the fleeing soul race minor sovereigns. He used the 4 aspects death prison to kill them all, leaving not a single one alive. Absolute space domain. Long Yu took out the ancient Dragonbone Tower and formed an absolute space domain. None of the nearby soul race members could even think of escaping. The 1,000 or so soul race members were trapped just like that. Even if they joined forces to attack the absolute space domain, they wouldn't be able to break it. After all, Long Yu's martial cultivation was already at the first phase sovereign realm. Combined with the ancient Dragonbone Tower, which had reached the highest level of compatibility with the ancient Dragonbone Tower, the strength of the absolute space domain was something that even a 7th phase sovereign realm expert would need some time to break, let alone these soul race minor sovereigns. It was only a matter of time before these fellows were completely annihilated. The 5th phase sovereigns had impulsively joined forces and directly sent 5 of the Emperor's legions to their deaths. However, this was also because they had encountered a terrifying fellow like Long Yu. If it were any other human or beast, which 1st phase sovereign realm expert would be able to withstand the combined attack of 5 of them? It could only be said that Long Yu was too strong, not that his opponents were too weak. The final 5th phase sovereign realm soul race member was trapped by his own mental barrier and had no chance of escaping. Long Yu leisurely finished off the other soul race minor sovereigns, then turned around and used the 4 aspects death prison to trap the 5th phase sovereign realm soul race. Under the tight encirclement, the 5th phase sovereign realm soul race member's mental barrier was finally destroyed. Then his body was tightly entangled by the death lines, and the death aura continuously corroded his mental power. Perhaps because it had seen Long Yu kill the other 4 soul race members so quickly and efficiently. The last soul race member didn't have any thoughts of resisting. However, the 5th phase sovereign realm soul race member quickly discovered that Long Yu's attacks weren't particularly strong. Even though the death lines had completely entangled his mental power and the death aura was constantly invading his mental body, it would still take some time to kill him. It turned out that this human brat wasn't so terrifying. As long as they didn't attack Long Yu, it would be very difficult for Long Yu to kill all 5 soul race experts. Unfortunately, one wrong step had caused them to completely collapse. There was no room for redemption. Now, even if Long Yu needed to spend some time to kill the remaining soul race member, it was only a matter of time. This was because the soul race member was tightly bound by the threads of death. There was no way for him to escape. The aura of death continued to corrode him, and all that was left was to struggle. For Long Yu, it was just a matter of spending some time and consuming some pills to recover his strength. In this mission, he had already used up several dozen pills, so he did not mind taking a few more. Just the value of these pills alone would probably reach over 1 million battlefield army merit points. However, the outcome was gratifying. This mission was not far from completion, and the rewards were extremely generous. Moon Song and Red Oriole had long since reached the point of prostrating themselves in admiration towards Long Yu. He was able to single-handedly fight against 5 5th phase sovereign realm soul race experts. No one would believe this if word got out. This was also because he had cultivated the worldly purification body martial technique. When we return, 20 million battlefield army merit points should belong to him, right? Moon Song smiled bitterly. Even if we're just here for fun, 2 million is more than enough. Red Oriole covered her mouth and giggled. It's fine. Let's split it evenly. Long Yu isn't a greedy person. Moreover, I relied on you to complete a lot of missions before, so we'll split it evenly. Since we're on the same side, there's no need to say such things. You're right. Moonsong nodded and giggled. She tilted her head and glanced at Long Yu. His figure seemed somewhat unreachable in the void. He was fighting against the remaining fifth phase Sovereign Realm Soul Race expert alone. He would probably be able to finish it off very soon. The Heaven Fire Doyen was still studying the mental energy teleportation formation, but he had yet to find any results. The minor soul race sovereigns around the Heaven Fire Doyen were first restrained by Moonsong and Red Oriole. Then, they were all killed by Long Yu. Not a single one was left alive. At this moment, Moonsong and Red Oriole were cleaning up the battlefield. The soul race also had small worlds. There were still many remains of small worlds left on the battlefield. Most people were extremely curious about the cultivation methods of the soul race. This was because they did not have a physical body, but they needed physical cultivation resources to absorb the power of creation from things like creation. On the other hand, alchemy and weapon refinement were things that the soul race didn't have at all. They absorbed the power of creation and the heaven and earth spiritual energy to increase their mental strength. They didn't comprehend divine texts, so their cultivation methods were very different from the humans and demons. All things in the world had their own rules of development. There were many different races, and they all had their own cultivation methods and battle styles. The two women began to collect the remains of the small worlds. First, they collected the remains of the 5th phase soul race sovereigns. However, they did not enter the remains to explore them. After all, they were not completely out of danger yet. Perhaps something unexpected would happen when Long Yu fought against the last soul race expert. No one could be sure. The two women first collected the remains of the small worlds. In total, they collected more than 200. They did not know what they could obtain from them. After about an hour, Long Yu finally used the 4 symbols death prison to grind the last 5th phase soul race expert to death. It was really not easy. If he had not relied on the world-cleansing soul mirror to kill 3 of the other 4 and severely injure one, this battle would have been very suspenseful. It was a pity that the 5 soul race experts were too unlucky. Long Yu personally collected the fragment of the small world of the last soul race expert. He then let the ancient dragon bone pagoda maintain the absolute space domain while he reunited with the 2 girls. First, he ran to Heaven Fire Doyen and asked him how long it would take to understand this mental energy teleportation formation. The answer he received was that it would take at least a few days. With such a long time, Long Yu could not be bothered to wait. How about we leave one person outside and the other 2 enter the small worlds to explore the remains? Suggested Long Yu. We'll take turns going in. Red Oriole nodded and said, "You guys go in first. Let's see what's inside the remains of the 5th phase soul race experts. There are 5 of them in total. Long Yu, you take 3 of them. Moonsong and I will each take 1. The distribution of the spoils of war was also an important source of conflict in the team. However, this problem did not exist on Long Yu's side. First of all, Long Yu was not the kind of person who only cared about profit. If there was anything, it would naturally be shared among the team members. Moonsong also knew how to be modest and would not fight over the distribution of the spoils of war. As for Red Oriole, she was naturally on the same side as Long Yu. It was even less likely that there would be any conflict over the distribution of the spoils of war. I'm fine with anything. If I find anything good in the remains of the small worlds, it will all be mine. Long Yu laughed. You guys pick a small world first. You guys go in and search. I'll wait for one of you to come out before I go in. Searching for the remains of a small world was a relatively troublesome task. At the very least, for Long Yu's group of 3, they definitely did not have the time to search through so many small world remains. Only the remains of the 5th phase soul race experts were worth searching for. In the battlefield army, there was a profession that specialized in searching for the remains of other races' small worlds. Most of them were human or Yao Lu's cultivators. They would purchase the remains of a small world at a low price and then search through them themselves. Generally, they would be able to earn back their investment and if they were lucky, they could even make a huge profit. Within the battlefield army, there was a department that specialized in recovering the resources found in the remains of the small worlds. This was a very time-consuming and labor-intensive task. Not many people were willing to do it, but there were many who were happy to do it. After all, every fragment of a small world could be a treasure trove, and one might be able to find something especially valuable from it. It was even possible to become rich overnight. Of course, cultivators without any resources would normally not be able to purchase large amounts of small world fragments to search through. They basically had to have a way to do so. It was not easy to purchase the remains of other races' small worlds from the battlefield army. Long Yu's group of 3 had obtained nearly 300 soul races' small world fragments. If they were sold, they could be sold for at least 10 million battlefield army merit points. If they were ordinary Ice God race or Fire God race small world fragments, they would normally be sold for 5,000 battlefield army merit points each. Of course, this was only for small world fragments from lower to upper dominators. If they were great rulers, then the price would be calculated according to the ranks. A first phase great ruler would be 10,000, a second phase great ruler 40,000, a third phase great ruler 90,000, and so on. Of course, once one reached the fourth phase great ruler, the price would double. A fourth phase ruler's small world fragment would generally be sold for 320,000 battlefield army merit points on the market. A fifth phase ruler's small world fragment would be 500,000. A sixth phase ruler's small world fragment would be 1 million. And a seventh phase ruler's small world fragment would start at 2 million. After all, normally speaking, the wreckage of a 7-stage ruler's little world definitely contained resources worth more than 2 million contribution points. As for how much was destroyed when the ruler was killed, no one knew. It all depended on the buyer's luck. If the buyer was lucky, they might be able to find an ocean of cultivation resources worth 100 million battlefield army merit points. If the buyer was unlucky, everything in the small world fragment might have been destroyed. Who knew? The soul race's small world fragment would definitely be much more expensive than the small world fragments of other races. It would be at least double the price. Therefore, the amount of small world fragments Long Yu and the others had obtained was a huge sum of wealth. When they returned, they could find a place to auction them off and exchange them for some cultivation resources. After all, they didn't have the time to search through them one by one. Chapter 1449. After about 3 days, Moonsong finally came out of the first small world wreckage. Her face was filled with joy. It seemed like she had found a lot of good stuff. How's the situation? What good stuff did you find? Long had been guarding outside. When he saw Moonsong come out, he asked her. There are 2 heaven crystal grade creations. One is 3rd grade, and the other is 4th grade. The total value is around 6 to 7 million. We've hit the jackpot. Moonsong giggled. There are also some earthly seal grade creations and quite a few mental energy condensations. I'm not sure what's recorded in them, but I think they should be cultivation methods for certain mental attacks. Mental energy condensations were used by the soul race to record things. They were equivalent to jade slips for humans and demons. However, the soul race did not have a physical body and did not like to use physical objects. Therefore, the things they recorded were fixed structures condensed from mental energy. These things were known as mental energy condensations. Among the human race and the demon race, there were also people who used this method to record things. However, such situations were rare. After all, not many people understood the structure of mental energy condensation. With something as convenient as jade slips, who would bother with complex mental energy condensation? Therefore, to decipher these 2 mental energy condensations require professionals. At the very least, Long Yu and the other 2 did not know how to do it. Did Heaven Fire Doyen know? In any case, he had to wait for Heaven Fire Doyen to settle this mental energy teleportation formation. Now, Long Yu did not dare to disturb the old man. It would not be good if he suddenly went crazy. Since I'm out, you can go in and search first. The soul race's small world wreckage is quite big. It will take a lot of time. I only searched it casually, Moon Song said to Long Yu. Small world wreckages that have been searched once were known as second-hand small world wreckages. These small world wreckages could still be sold, but they were only worth 1/10 of the original price. In other words, after Moon Song searched this small world wreckage once, she could probably sell it for 50,000 army merits. After all, it was easy to miss something in a single search. Those who specialized in searching small world wreckages had many professional skills. They could guarantee that they could find all the valuable things in the small world wreckage. Long Yu nodded and left Moon Song alone outside. Then he picked a small world wreckage belonging to a fifth phase soul ruler and entered it to begin his search. It was not the first time that Long Yu had searched the remains of other people's small worlds. He had even searched the small world of a demigod from the Ice God clan and found an ice essence and a space essence. The two items alone were worth more than 100 million, and it was only the remains of a demigod's small world. The other small world wreckage of a demigod was handed over to Man Xion's group to search. Long Yu didn't know if they had found anything good in the end. After all, he and Red Oriole had finished searching first and left first. Long Yu once again entered the wreckage of someone else's miniature world. He had a faint feeling of anticipation. This feeling was just like digging for treasures. It was possible that he could obtain some precious things from the wreckage of this miniature world. Moon Song, for example, had obtained 2 Heaven Crystal grade creation items from the wreckage of the small world. One was grade 3, and the other was grade 4. Together, they were worth 6 to 7 million army merit points. As soon as Long Yu entered the small world wreckage, he felt a dense mental energy surround him, as expected of a small world wreckage of the soul race. Even if he didn't come here to search for something, but to improve his mental energy, it was still a good place. If someone wanted to train their mental power, this place was the best place to do so. Their efficiency could be increased by at least 30%. That was why the small world wreckage of the soul race was so expensive. On one hand, it had a special function, and on the other hand, it was too rare. Normally speaking, it was impossible for ordinary people to enter the battlefield against the alien races of the soul race. In the territory of the demon race, the special demons who fought against the soul race rarely sold the small world wreckage of the soul race to the outside world. That was because the special demons cultivated mental power. After obtaining the small world wreckage of the soul race, they absorbed the mental power in it themselves. How could they sell it? Therefore, the small world wreckage of the soul race was rarely seen on the market. The small world wreckage of the Ice God race, the Earth God race, and the Fire God race also contained the power of the Ice God race and the Fire God race. Cultivating the power of the corresponding attribute in the small world wreckage would also increase one's efficiency. However, this kind of small world wreckage was more common, so its price naturally couldn't compare to the small world wreckage of the soul race. Long Yu didn't stop. In any case, he didn't need to cultivate any mental power now. He could just search it directly. Since he had cultivated balance control, his speed in searching the small world wreckage was definitely much faster than that of ordinary people. However, what surprised him was why Red Oriole had come out later than Moon Song. Could it be that there were many precious items in the small world wreckage that Red Oriole was searching for? Hence, the successive appearances of the small world wreckage delayed her by a little. This was the most likely scenario. As for Red Oriole encountering some dangerous situation in the small world wreckage, it was basically impossible. This was because once the owner of the small world died, everything in the small world wreckage would gradually become dead, and the living beings in the small world would also slowly die. Either that, or there was a trap in the small world wreckage. However, who would set up a trap in their own small world? After all, no one knew when they would die. Those fellows from the soul race couldn't be so perverted, right? In any case, Red Oriole definitely had the ability to take care of herself. There was no need for Long Yu to worry about her. As he traversed the small world wreckage, he enhanced himself with the balanced light, and his spiritual senses and perception were raised to the extreme. Amidst his boundless mental power, he kept traversing the small world wreckage, and soon saw the first connate magic fruit of the soul race expert. It was an extremely abstract existence. It was a pattern condensed from mental power. It was impossible to tell what shape it had, and the pattern was constantly changing. Long Yu sensed the connate magic fruit from afar and did not sense the aura of any cultivation resources. Hence, he shook his head and continued to the next one. Searching for the wreckage of a small world was an extremely boring task. Most of the time, one would only see an empty space. No matter whose small world wreckage it was an extremely vast space. The connate magic fruit occupied 7 small spots, and the rest was empty space. In every small world, there would be at least one area for the living beings in the small world to live in. For example, the new martial world in Long Yu's small world had hundreds of billions of humans and demons living in it. The living beings in the soul race's small world were, of course, soul race beings. However, these beings had not reached the sovereign mystic realm. At most, they were at the level of a 3- or 4-star emperor. Moreover, after the owner of the small world died, the entire small world would lose its vitality. Heaven and earth's spiritual chi would gradually dissipate, and the living beings in the small world would soon die. Moreover, just like the humans and demons in the new martial world, they were unable to leave the small world on their own. Therefore, after a sovereign mystic realm expert died, the living beings in his small world would not be far from death. The 9 Nether Realm was an exception. After all, the Geo-Dragon Emperor was not considered dead at that time. He was just sealed. There was no point in thinking about this. Long Yu spent about 4 days searching through the small world wreckage. This was because the small world wreckage he had searched was simply too vast. This soul race being was probably close to the level of a 6-stage sovereign. Unfortunately, it had encountered a heaven-defying existence like Long Yu, and was directly repelled to death by the world-cleansing soul mirror. After searching for a while, Long Yu was disappointed to find that there was nothing in the small world wreckage. He did not know if it was because he had not searched carefully enough, but he had only found a few Earth Seal rank creations and 1 or 2 mental energy condensed bodies. Their value should not be that high. In his disappointment, he could not be bothered to search for the next 2 soul race small world wreckage. After he came out, he directly asked Red Oriole, "How long did you search in the small world wreckage? What did you find?" She searched for 5 days, but she found something good. Moonsong looked a little envious as she spoke. Red Oriole pursed her lips and smiled. She took out something from her bosom. "Look at this." Long Yu was shocked when he saw it. It was a power essence. Just like the spatial essence, ice essence, and shadow essence that Long Yu had seen before, this power essence was even more precious. It was a wood-type Genesis essence. Long Yu had seen the power essence of the divine runes. Space, ice, and shadow were all attributes of the divine runes. But now, the power essence in Red Oriole's hand contained an extremely strong wood attribute power of Genesis. It was clearly in Genesis essence. Compared to the power essence of divine runes, the Genesis essence was clearly much more precious. Not only that, but it was also much more effective and adaptable. This wood-type Genesis essence could be used by anyone. If it was fused into one's innate sacred ability fruit, it would bring about a special effect. As for what the special effect was, it was hard to say. It depended on the nature of the wood-type Genesis power and the cultivator's innate sacred ability fruit. Chapter 1450. When Long Yu saw this wood origin essence, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. He didn't expect Red Oriole to be able to obtain such a precious thing from the wreckage of that small world. Such an existence was worth at least 100 million battlefield merit points. Since you've obtained such an essence, why don't you quickly fuse it with your innate mystique and see what effects it has? Long Yu couldn't help but say, "I'm wondering if you need it more." Red Oriole smiled. "I've already said that it belongs to whoever finds it. You found it, so of course it's for you to use. In any case, anyone can fuse with an essence of Genesis essence, right?" Long Yu waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need it. He would let Red Oriole fuse with it. After all, Long Yu couldn't be considered strong on his own. Red Oriole's martial talent was no weaker than his, and her own strength was also very important. She could be of great help to Long Yu at crucial moments. Long Yu couldn't sacrifice Red Oriole to strengthen himself. Moreover, Red Oriole's strength would definitely increase much more after fusing with this essence of Genesis essence than Long Yu. This was because Long Yu's most important treasures, the Book of Shadows and the Path of Nine Underworlds, had already fused with the Shadow Essence and the Space Essence. This wood Genesis essence could at most be fused with other innate divine ability fruits, and the effects might not be as good. As for Red Oriole, she had yet to fuse with any of the 7 innate mystique fruits. She could choose the most commonly used innate mystique fruits to fuse with them, and the increase in strength would not be small. Then I'll use it for myself. Actually, I didn't plan on giving it to you. I just wanted to show it to you and make you jealous. Red Oriole snorted softly and put away the wood elemental origin essence with a smile. In any case, the Heavenfire Doyen hasn't recovered yet. Why don't you fuse with it now and see what effects it has? Of course, Long Yu wouldn't take Red Oriole's words seriously. If he hadn't rejected her, this last would definitely have given him the Genesis essence. He was just saying it casually. Red Oriole nodded and began to fuse with the wood-type primordium essence. The 5 elements of absolute beginning power were the strongest powers in this world. As for the wood element absolute beginning power, Long Yu hadn't had much contact with it. However, he heard that it was related to mental strength. After all, it was something found in the wreckage of the soul race's small world. It was normal for it to be related to mental strength. It was just that he didn't know what kind of effect the essence of wood element origin would produce after fusing with Red Oriole's innate divine ability. Red Oriole returned to her miniature world and began to fuse with a wood-type Genesis essence. Long Yu and Moon Song stood guard around her. Although it was unlikely that any danger would befall them, it was still necessary to be prepared for the worst. Red Oriole's miniature world mark was in the outside world, unprotected. It was her most vulnerable moment, so she needed someone to protect her. Fusing with the Genesis essence didn't take much time. Just like how Long Yu had fused with the Shadow essence, it didn't take long for the innate divine ability fruit to transform. Roughly 4 hours later, Red Oriole emerged from her miniature world. As soon as she emerged, she excitedly said, "I fused the wood-type Genesis essence into the innate divine ability fruit of the blood-colored whip. This move is amazing. It can actually cause the same kind of damage to the mind." This was incredible news. Even Long Yu was shocked by her. It could cause the same kind of damage to the mind? In other words, if Red Oriole was in her current state, with so many Soul Race members surrounding her, she could easily kill those Soul Race minor sovereigns. Originally, Red Oriole's blood-colored whip was the innate divine ability she used the most. It was extremely destructive, but in the past, it could only damage the opponent's physical body. It didn't pose any threat to the mind. But now, after fusing with the wood-type Genesis essence, Red Oriole's blood-colored whip could simultaneously damage the opponent's physical body and mind. Not only could it be used to deal with the Soul Race, but it could also be used in normal battles. Think about it. When these whips hit the opponent's body, the opponent might be able to defend against the physical damage, but they wouldn't be able to defend against the damage to the mind. This was especially true against humans and Yao. If one's mental strength wasn't strong, it would be even harder to defend against such a move. If it was used against foreign races like the Abyss race, which had extremely powerful physical bodies, it would be like a father beating his son. There was no suspense. Simply put, Red Oriole's innate divine ability was already heaven-defying. In the human and Yao race, there weren't many divine abilities or martial techniques that could damage the opponent's mind. Now that Red Oriole had mastered this technique, her true combat strength had increased by at least 3 or 4 times. This was enough for her to cross a higher level of martial realm to deal with enemies. In the past, when she was a 3rd rank ruler, she could probably deal with an ordinary 5th rank or 6th rank ruler. But now, she could even fight against a 6th rank or 7th rank ruler. At the very least, even if she was facing a 7th phase great ruler, if she continued her sneak attack, she might be able to directly kill the opponent. Although physical attacks might not be able to destroy the opponent, she could definitely destroy the opponent's mind in one move. The destruction of the mind represented the end of a cultivator's life. For humans and Yao, the mind and soul were interconnected. They would prosper together, and if they were destroyed together, they would be destroyed together. It had to be said that Red Oriole's innate divine ability was already heaven-defying. This was good news for Longyu. After all, if he wanted to obtain the Shadow Essence, he would have to go to the Soul Race's territory sooner or later. If he was alone, it would be dangerous. Now that Red Oriole had such a heaven-defying divine ability, his chances of returning alive were much higher, at least double. Of course, the time was not ripe yet. Longyu's martial realm was too low. If he went to the Soul Race's territory now, he would be courting death. This time, he was able to fight against 1,000 alone because his opponents were all minor rulers or even existences on the level of Emperor. However, if he went to the Soul Race's territory, the Soul Race's experts he would encounter would definitely be at least a 7th rank ruler. Moreover, the numbers would not be as small as they were now. If he was truly surrounded, it was possible that there would be hundreds of thousands of Soul Race members. It all depended on how big of a commotion Longyu caused. In the past, a similar situation had occurred in the human and Yao races' territories. A very powerful outsider race genius had intruded into the human and Yao races' territories, creating a reign of terror. In the end, dozens of battlefield legions and hundreds of thousands of warriors have been mobilized to encircle and annihilate the outsider race. Longyu thought to himself that if he wanted to intrude into the Soul Race's territory, he would have to reach such a level, right? Of course, he did not want to end up dying in the Soul Race's territory. Therefore, now that Red Oriole had fused with the wood element origin essence and obtained such a heaven-defying mystical ability, it was extremely good news for Longyu. If only you had this from the start, you wouldn't have had to deal with the Soul Race alone. Red Oriole felt that it was a pity. All right, be content. In the future, if we encounter the Soul Race again, we will be able to fight side by side. Longyu pulled Red Oriole over and held her in his arms for a while. Then, he put his hands on her shoulders and smiled. Speaking of which, should we go to the Blood Demon Galaxy to take a look and see my future father-in-law? He had been with Red Oriole for so long, but Longyu had never seen her father. He did not know what kind of person the chief of the Blood Demon race was. Let's go back after this academic year is over. We can't go back now, can we? To be honest, my father probably doesn't like you. After all, your cultivation level is not as high as mine. If you go, he will definitely look down on you. Red Oriole clicked her tongue. So what if my cultivation level is low? Longyu laughed mischievously, but he didn't pay much attention to it. After the school year is over, I'll probably be able to reach the 3rd level of the Great Ruler Realm. At that time, you can find some powerful fellows from the Blood Demon race and see if there's anyone who can kill me. When did you become so arrogant? You used to be very humble. Red Oriole had a look of disdain. She took 2 steps back and ran over to stand with Moonsong. Moonsong covered her mouth and laughed softly. The way the two of them bickered was really interesting. It had been about 7 days since they had killed the Soul Race. At this time, the Heaven Fire Doyen should be almost done. The entire mental energy teleportation formation, after losing the energy from the 5/5 phase Dominator rank Soul Race beings, did not continue to construct it. However, the array still maintained its previous structure and did not show any signs of collapsing. This allowed the Heaven Fire Doyen to study it in peace for such a long time. If not for the fact that he had to destroy the array in order to complete the Academy's training mission, Longyu would not have been willing to stay in this place for so long. After all, he was in need of battlefield army merits. Saving time also meant that he could obtain more battlefield army merits. The Heaven Fire Doyen should be done by now after studying it for so long, right? Although that was what he thought, Long Yu did not ask the Heaven Fire Doyen how long it would take. After all, even the Heaven Fire Doyen himself would not be able to come up with an accurate answer. It was about time. Long Yu and the others did not plan to do anything else. Instead, they waited for the Heaven Fire Doyen to come up with a conclusion about the teleportation array. There were still 2 fifth-phase rulers' small world remains. Long Yu planned to bring them back to the Demigod College to search. He could not bear to sell them directly. After all, Red Oriole had just found a wood element primordium essence. Perhaps the 2 small world remains had it too? If Long Yu and Red Oriole searched together, their speed should be quite fast. Long Yu did not believe that his luck would always be so bad that he would not be able to find anything. After waiting for another 6 hours, Heaven Fire Doyen finally let out a cheer. I've finally cracked this spirit array. I see. A spirit array that purely transmits mental energy actually needs to be constructed this way. Hearing this cheer, Long Yu and the others finally heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like the mission could finally be completed. Chapter 1451. Heaven Fire Doyen's attainments in spirit arrays were naturally incomparable to ordinary people. Even though he wasn't the top spirit array master in the human race or the demon race dominion, he was definitely one of the top figures. Heaven Fire Doyen only took 8 days to study the soul race's mental energy teleportation array. If it wasn't for Heaven Fire Doyen, Long Yu didn't know how long it would have taken him. Destroying the spirit array wasn't something that could be done with brute force. When Heaven Fire Doyen cheered excitedly, Long Yu heaved a sigh of relief. The training mission was finally completed. Then, Heaven Fire Doyen told Long Yu and the other 2 how to destroy the mental energy teleportation array. Heaven Fire Doyen got Long Yu and the other 2 to head to different locations. In addition, he had to condense 2 primordial shadows. He had to destroy the mental energy teleportation array from 5 different locations. Otherwise, given Long Yu's current strength, he would need at least a month to destroy it completely, since the spirit array had a self-repairing function. That wasn't something that Long Yu could wait for. With Heaven Fire Doyen around, it indeed saved him a lot of time. According to what Heaven Fire Doyen said, Long Yu, and his 2 desolate ancient shadows headed in different directions and started to destroy the spiritual energy teleportation formation. The 5 spots that Heaven Fire Doyen pointed out were the weakest spots of the spirit array. The entire spirit array only had these 5 spots. This might be related to the fact that the entire spirit array was constructed by 5 soul race experts. Under Heaven Fire Doyen's guidance, the entire spirit array was quickly destroyed. Long Yu casually lifted his hand and struck the weakest spot of the spirit array with the 9 Underworld's Dragon Breath. In addition to the destruction of the other 4 spots, the entire spirit array began to collapse. From start to finish, in less than an hour, this spiritual force transmission array that had been constructed by the 5 soul race powerhouses for several months was completely destroyed by Long Yu and the others. He didn't know what the soul race was planning, but since the array had been destroyed, the plan couldn't be carried out. After destroying the magic circles, Long Yu was greatly relieved. The mission in the Demigod's College had finally been completed. In terms of time and profit, it was quite efficient. On average, everybody received 1,000,000 battlefield military honors every day. If they continued to accept such training missions and completed them as smoothly as this time, the 3 of them would be able to accumulate close to 100 million battlefield army merits in a month. Furthermore, they had gained some extra profit this time. Those were the remains of the hundreds of small worlds of the soul race. Added together, they were worth at least 10 million. They had to find a place to sell them. Red Oriole, look around and see if there are any human or demon settlements nearby. I don't know where this place is, but I hope it's not in the depths of the foreign race's battlefield. Long Yu said to Red Oriole. Right now, Red Oriole was better at exploring their surroundings than he was. Red Oriole nodded. She enhanced herself with the light of equalization and began to explore the surroundings. As for Long Yu, he let the Heaven Fire Doyen return to his small world first. The old man was very excited. After returning to Long Yu's small world, he couldn't wait to try to build a teleportation array with mental power. Even though this array wasn't very useful to the human race or the demon race, the Heavenfire Doyen had a research attitude. Many times, he might be able to derive the construction method of other similar arrays if he grasped the construction method of this array. To the Heavenfire Doyen, however, it was extremely rare. This type of array was only slightly more common in the soul race's territory. Regardless of whether it was in the human race or the demon race's territory, there weren't many arrays related to mental power. Very soon, Red Oriole brought good news. This place isn't in the depths of the foreign race's battlefield. It's in the human race's territory. This gave Long Yu a fright. There is actually a soul race member who is so bold as to build a teleportation array in the human race's territory. No wonder the reward of this training mission was so high. If this mission failed, the consequences would be very serious. If the soul race's main force directly entered the human race's territory through this teleportation array, it wouldn't be good news for the human race no matter what they were here for. And in the human race's territory, the number of people who had the means to deal with the soul race was less than 1 in 100, or even less than 1 in 1,000. Once they invaded, the situation around the human race's territory would become very serious. Long Yu guessed that if an expert had taken action, it would have been impossible for the 5 soul race members to build a teleportation array here for a few months. However, the Demigod College had probably deliberately placed this matter in the training mission and let the students deal with it. This was a kind of training for the students, and it could also relieve the pressure in other aspects of the human race. Although this place was in the human race's territory, it was a relatively remote area. It was located in a remote galaxy between the human race's territory and the demon race's territory. This place was vast but sparsely populated, and there weren't even many divine rune origins. No wonder Long Yu had thought that it was in the depths of the foreign race's battlefield. But since they had found people, the next step was easy. They just had to find a place to sell off the remains of the soul race's small world. Red Oriole's method of probing her surroundings did not simply rely on her spiritual perception that had a balanced control. Instead, she had to combine it with the power of deduction. Even with the light of equalization, her spiritual perception could only cover a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers. Furthermore, there was no sign of human habitation within a radius of at least 100 million kilometers around them. The reason why she could detect that this place was in the human race's territory and obtain some other information was that there were some miscellaneous items in this area. Red Oriole first sensed these miscellaneous items with her perception, and then used her deduction ability to deduce these miscellaneous items. She could then clearly know the information of these miscellaneous items, such as who these miscellaneous items originally belonged to, where they came from, how long they had been drifting in the void, and so on. In the endless void, it was very easy to encounter some strange things. They could be created objects that had absorbed the power of creation, damaged weapons, blank jade slips, and so on. Everything would appear. There was a lot of information on these things, and she could deduce them one by one using her deduction ability. The nearest human settlement is more than 1,000,000,000 kilometers away. We still need some time to reach it. Red Oriole turned her head and asked Long Yu, "Should we go over, or should we directly return to the Demigod College?" "Let's go over and take a look." Long Yu pondered for a moment and said, he had the Void Nether Dragon Dagger. Even if it was more than 1,000,000,000 kilometers away, it would be very easy for him to cross. He could teleport almost 10 million kilometers away with a casual jump through the Void Traverse. He would only need to teleport 100 times to reach the human settlement. Long Yu let Red Oriole and Moon Song enter his small world. Then he entered the internal space of the Void Nether Dragon Dagger and asked Little Void to directly go in that direction. Since Red Oriole had obtained a lot of information about the nearby areas through her deduction, Long Yu did not need to worry about getting lost. The Void Nether Dragon Dagger flew all the way to its destination. About 4 hours later, it had already arrived near the human settlement that Red Oriole had deduced. After arriving, apart from selling the debris of the soul race's small world that he obtained this time, Longyu was also going to visit the trade market to see if there were any special pills that could improve his compatibility with the Berserker attribute. If there weren't, he could also see if there were any relevant materials for making pills. After all, as long as there were materials, he could bring them back for Liao Lele to make pills for herself. At this moment, Liao Lele's skills and expertise in alchemy had already surpassed most human beings and demons. The key was that she had the Misery Sea Medicine Cauldron, which was left by the Alliance of Sufferers. It was definitely a top-notch artifact for alchemy. When the Void Nether Dragon Dagger broke the void and teleported to the nearest planet, Long Yu discovered, rather to his dismay, that the planet was rather barren. The origin of the divine runes not far away was rather dim, too, as if it were about to lose power. The planet that he arrived at was inhabited by a lot of human cultivators. However, those cultivators were not very strong. Most of them were only in the Emperor Path secret realm. Many of them were even in the Heavenly Being's secret realm. It was really a remote planet. Long Yu shook his head, a little disappointed. In such a place, whether it was selling the soul race's small world wreckage or going to the market to look for special pills, the chances of success were relatively slim. The chances of success were not high. This place was too poor. Long Yu did not believe that anyone here could fork out 10 million battlefield army merit points to buy the soul race's small world wreckage. Of course, since he was already here, he naturally had to take a good look around. He could not just leave like this. Perhaps he could find some good things. Long Yu called out Red Oriole and Moonsong. Then, the three of them descended on the barren planet and flew toward the nearest city on the planet. Along the way, there were many native cultivators. They were dressed rather plainly and strangely, with strips of cloth wrapped around their bodies. This was probably a custom of this place. When these native cultivators saw Long Yu and the other two flying through the air, they appeared somewhat curious and alarmed. This situation puzzled Long Yu. Even if foreign cultivators rarely came to this place, these native cultivators would at most be curious, right? What was with the fear in their eyes, which were exposed through the gaps in their clothes? Long Yu did not think too much about it. He brought the two women directly to the outskirts of the city before descending. After all, some cities prohibited flying. Even if someone was very powerful, they still had to respect the other party's customs. Chapter 1452. Walking on the streets of the city, Long Yu and his companions felt increasingly strange. This place was different from the other places they had been to before. In addition to the strange clothes of the local cultivators, the overall style of the city was also very strange. There was no city lord's mansion or trading area like they had seen before. There were only mud houses. These houses were built with a mixture of brown sand and soil. For cultivators, they were not strong at all. Long Yu even felt that he could destroy the whole city with a wave of his hand. Logically speaking, the residences of cultivators should not be so fragile. However, this was indeed the case, just like the residences of ordinary people. The people living in these mud houses were not divided into families or organizations. They seemed to be divided into social classes. In the first few low mud houses that appeared in front of Long Yu, lived some local cultivators of the Heavenly People's secret land. They were doing some boring physical activities, such as mixing herbs, watering iron castings, and so on. In some of the houses that followed, there were cultivators in the divine secret realm. Their work seemed to be easier than those in the heavenly human secret realm, but most of them were doing hard labor. Overall, it felt like this city, or rather the native cultivators on this planet, were not as free as other places. Instead, they were controlled by a certain force. As for the specifics, Long Yu did not know either. In any case, when he went over to ask those people, they would all stay far away, as if they did not dare to communicate with them. This situation made Long Yu a little puzzled. He just wanted to do some business. Was it so difficult? In any case, since he was here, he might as well have a good look around. The customs of this place seemed to be a unique experience. The territory of the human clan was extremely vast. The customs of each place must be different. For example, the members of the Joyo Dragon Emperor in the Joyo Galaxy all served the Joyo Dragon Emperor. However, they only wanted to obtain the power of the Joyo Dragon Emperor. They were no longer the Joyo tribe of the past. They only maintained some of their unique customs. Long Yu and the other two continued to move forward. Regardless of whether they were looking for someone to communicate with or to trade with, their target would not be those in the celestial being's secret realm or God's secret realm. However, before they could go far, a group of people flew over from the sky in front of them. From the looks of it, they were flying directly towards Long Yu and the others. Their formation was quite powerful, and there was even a faint pressure coming from them. However, from Long Yu's point of view, this pressure and strength seemed to be child's play. It was obvious that the other party could no longer suppress the current Long Yu. Appearing in front of the three of them was a team of roughly 20 local cultivators. The leader of the team was an old man with a white cloth wrapped around his head. His entire body was also wrapped in white cloth, just like the mummies that Long Yu knew of in the past. Behind the old man were probably the old man's subordinates. All of them were dressed very strangely. Among the 20 or so people present, the old man's martial arts realm was the highest. However, he was only at the level of a superior ruler. Yet, it seemed like this old man was already the person with the most authority in this city. When the old man appeared with his subordinates, some of the local cultivators nearby revealed extremely respectful expressions. It was obvious that this old man's identity was quite extraordinary. Long Yu heaved a sigh of relief, because this old man was clearly one of the people who had a say in this city. As for what was going on, he could just ask this old man about it. "Senior, may I know what planet and city this is? We have come from a faraway place and wish to sell some things. I wonder if there is a place similar to an exchange here?" Long Yu went forward and asked the old man directly. When the old man heard what Long Yu said, he lifted his withered eyes that were wrapped in white cloth and looked at him. Then, he nodded slowly and said, "Follow me. This is the most barren planet in the Abyss Ridge Galaxy. It used to be the main planet of the Abyss Ridge Galaxy, and it was called the Abyss Ridge Star. However, it has since been abandoned." The old man seemed to feel a little helpless as he said this. However, he still turned around and waved his hand, indicating for Long Yu and the others to follow him. Seeing that the strongest old man was only an upper-level dominator, Long Yu, Moon Song, and Red Oriole didn't feel too alarmed. They had even dealt with 7-stage dominators and demigods before. There was really nothing to be afraid of in this place. They followed the old man to the center of the city. As they listened to the old man's explanation, they finally understood what was going on. It turned out that this place belonged to the Abyss Ridge Galaxy. Originally, the Abyss Ridge Galaxy was considered one of the most barren regions in the human territory, and this planet was the most barren planet in the Abyss Ridge Galaxy. Even the divine rune source, not far away, was nearing exhaustion. The divine rune source had existed for countless years, and it wasn't far from exhaustion. It contained the power of a kind of divine rune source called the Withering Divine Rune. It was a derivative power of the Earth attribute Primordial Power. It was said that a long time ago, at least 1,000 years ago, the Withering Divine Rune source revealed its power. Some people could use the tyrannical Withering Divine Rune to become powerful warriors of a human race and fight against foreign invaders. "The three of you, there is no one living in this oasis now. It is a little deserted, please don't mind." After the old man brought the three of them to the oasis, he said to Long Yu, "Now, I will bring some people to bring some ancient cultivation resources from our city. The three of you can take a look. If you are willing, you can exchange for some small world remains with us. We will be very grateful." "All right," Long Yu nodded. He was looking forward to the things that the old man could bring out. He had tasted the sweetness from the Bone Clan. Only a place with a long history could have so many upper, unbounded level martial skill jade slips. Of course, This Abyss Ridge star was unlikely to have any unbounded level martial skills. However, there might be other things from ancient times that might be useful. Moreover, even if it wasn't of much use, Long Yu also planned to give them some fragments of the soul race's microcosms. After all, this place was too barren. As a fellow member of the human race, Long Yu couldn't bear to watch it any longer. If he could help them, he would do so. In any case, the fragments of the soul race's microcosms weren't particularly precious to him. The overall cultivation resources in the human territory were not lacking. The fact that the Abyss Ridge Star River was so barren was beyond Long Yu's expectations. The three of them stepped into the oasis. The buildings in the oasis were of a higher grade than the ones in the city. They looked more comfortable, and the surrounding environment was more refreshing. It was not as irritating. I don't know if it's an illusion, but why do I feel that there is some hidden danger in this place? After Moon Song stepped into the oasis, she had a bad feeling. Although the environment here was much better than the previous city, the environment was one thing and the danger was another. The other party had brought them to this desolate and uninhabited oasis, and it seemed that there was something wrong with them. No matter what, let's wait and see. If there is any danger, we don't have to be afraid. Long Yu squinted his eyes. He had the 9 nether prison tablet with him. If there was any danger, he could just enter the 9 nether prison tablet. If the other party attacked the 9 nether prison tablet forcefully, the entire Abyss Spine star might be destroyed. Chapter 1453. With his trump card, Long Yu wasn't worried about encountering any danger that could kill the three of them, so he didn't dwell too much on the matter. However, he still needed to be cautious. After the three of them entered the oasis, they found a house with a decent environment and sat down at a table in the courtyard, waiting for the old man to find more ancient items to exchange. However, Long Yu soon discovered that the old man didn't come. Instead, something else happened. Let's go out and take a look. Something doesn't seem right. Red Oriole was the first to sense that something was wrong, so she left the courtyard first. Long Yu and Moon Song immediately followed. The two of them also sensed that something was wrong. When they went out to take a look, they indeed discovered that something was wrong. The entire oasis was now covered in a dark green barrier of divine characters. This dark green barrier of divine characters was extremely strange and horrifying. It clearly hadn't been there earlier. It had clearly only appeared after Long Yu and the others entered. What's this? Is it to stop us from leaving the oasis? Moon Song frowned. She was almost certain that the old man was up to no good. What ulterior motive did he have in tricking them into coming to this oasis? Be careful. Stay alert, Moon Song said in a low voice. Long Yu said in a deep voice. Although he had his own trump card, it was better to be safe than sorry. At this time, he had to be careful. Moreover, it was impossible for him to immediately hide in the 9 underworld prison steel once Long Yu encountered danger. That was too cowardly. A mysterious and evil aura gradually spread out from the bottom of the lake in the center of the oasis. Long Yu and the others were quickly attracted by the mysterious and evil aura. They flew toward the lake in the center of the oasis and quickly reached the edge of the lake. They all frowned when they sensed the mysterious and evil aura spreading out from the lake. There had to be something in the lake. Moreover, the thing in the lake was definitely related to the old man. As for why the old man had tricked them into coming here, they would know once they entered the lake. However, it wasn't a good choice to enter the lake rashly. Long Yu, Red Oriole, and Moon Song couldn't sense anything beyond the dark green barrier of divine characters at the edge of the oasis. This dark green barrier had the effect of blocking spiritual senses. Moreover, when Long Yu discovered it, he immediately condensed a primordial shadow over. He discovered that the primordial shadow could not pass through the barrier to leave the oasis. In fact, even the path of the 9 underworlds could not break through the barrier, because this dark green barrier wasn't formed from spatial divine characters. Instead, it was formed from some kind of elemental divine character. Not even the path of the 9 underworld could break through it. The only way to break it was by brute force. However, This barrier was condensed by an expert using a formation. With the current strength of Long Yu and the others, they were unable to break it by brute force. It was clear that they had been lured into a trap. This is interesting. I wonder what's in the lake? Long Yu wasn't afraid. Instead, he was a little curious. After all, the strange and evil aura coming from the lake didn't seem to come from the human clan or the demon clan. It might be some kind of foreign race. It was really puzzling to encounter such a foreign race in the Abyss Ridge Galaxy in the human clan's territory. Could it be that the old man and the others on this planet had some kind of trade relationship with this foreign race? This old man had lured Long Yu and the others to this oasis. He had said that the environment was better, but in fact, he had set up a trap. He must have some kind of secret trade with the strange and evil existence in the lake. As the strange and evil aura in the lake grew stronger, Long Yu soon discovered that the water in the entire lake had turned dark green. Then, the dark green lake water directly flew into the sky. That's not lake water. It's a foreign race. Moonsong was the first to discover the situation. The floating lake water was not lake water, but a strange foreign race. This foreign race was covered from head to toe in dark green lake water. The lake water constantly flowed around its body, covering its body, making it impossible for people to see its specific form. However, it was easy to deal with it as long as they knew it was a foreign race. Judging from its aura, it should be in existence at the peak of the 7th stage sovereign realm. It wouldn't be long before it stepped into the demigod realm. It was only one step away. This surprised Long Yu a little. He didn't expect such a powerful foreign race to exist on this barren planet. Was it because of the arrival of this foreign race that the planet became so barren? Or could it be that the planet had become barren a long time ago, and this alien had only arrived later? Of course, Long Yu didn't know. Right now, the most pressing matter at hand was to get rid of this alien. Even if it was a level 7 Great Dominator, it wasn't like Long Yu hadn't seen it before. One had to know that he was a man who had even faced a demigod of the alien race. Of course, just him, Red Oriole, and Moonsong alone might not be able to deal with this foreign race. The only thing he could do now was to let the Heaven Fire Doyen out. After all, this wasn't a training mission from the Demigod College. It was normal to let the Heaven Fire Doyen out when they encountered difficulties. However, the Heaven Fire Doyen's direct combat strength wasn't very strong. He still needed the help of Long Yu and the two girls. What foreign race is this? The Heaven Fire Doyen saw the strange and evil foreign race covered in dark green lake water as soon as he came out. He couldn't help but frown. He felt a chill run down his spine. Very dangerous. This feeling emerged from the depths of the Heaven Fire Doyen's heart. Long Yu and the other two had also sensed the same thing. However, given the current situation, it was clear that they couldn't escape from this oasis. If they wanted to survive, the only way was to get rid of that alien being. Senior, you hold the front. We'll help from the side, Long Yu said to the Heaven Fire Doyen. The evil foreign race was covered in dark green lake water. It floated in the air like a huge balloon. Before Long Yu and the others could make a move, the foreign race first released countless dark green liquids that poured down on them like rain. Dodge! Long Yu didn't know the effects of the dark green liquids. Of course, he didn't dare to touch them. He immediately reminded the others. Then, he and Little Void teleported into the sky. They were even higher than the foreign race, and were almost close to the dark green barrier. Red Oriole was with Moonsong. Moonsong used 9 Firmament's Star Flash and instantly flashed to the sky not far from Long Yu. The power of Star Divine characters poured out and landed on the evil foreign race in an attempt to restrict its movements. Unfortunately, Moonsong was only at the level of a 4th phase Great Ruler. The difference between them was too great. She couldn't affect it at all. However, the Heaven Fire Doyen didn't leave. Instead, he raised his hand and condensed a layer of defense barrier. The flame barrier enveloped the Heaven Fire Doyen. When the dark green liquids poured down, they were completely evaporated by the flame barrier. They couldn't land on the Heaven Fire Doyen at all. Immediately after, the Heaven Fire Doyen didn't hesitate. He raised his hand and started to set up a formation. However, it was still unclear what kind of formation he was setting up. Didn't I ask him to fight the front? He actually started to set up a formation. Doesn't that mean he wants us to delay the foreign race? Red Oriole was puzzled. She, Moonsong, and Longyu didn't have much combat strength. At least, they didn't have any chance of winning against this peak 7th phase great ruler evil foreign race. Even delaying the foreign race was an extremely difficult task. However, since the Heaven Fire Doyen had started to set up a formation, the only thing they could do was delay the foreign race. 9 Nether Military Order. When Longyu saw this, he raised his hand without hesitation and released the ancient Dragon Bone Tower. Then, 3 dark creatures at the level of the 5th phase Great Ruler surged out. It was impossible for Longyu to fight the foreign race head-on. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know how he died. Even if he had a martial path secret technique like the Devil Dust Heart, he wouldn't dare to touch the foreign race. After all, the foreign race was too strange. Perhaps it had some special techniques. No one had seen such a foreign race before. In fact, they hadn't even come into contact with the dark green divine characters of this attribute. It was very likely that this foreign race had come from an extremely distant place. Then, it had taken root on this planet. It might have controlled or traded with the people on this planet to lure other powerful cultivators over. As for what this foreign race wanted to do to Longyu and the others, no one knew. Even the Heaven Fire Doyen didn't know. This was because even the Heaven Fire Doyen had never seen or even heard of such a foreign race. The form that was completely covered by the dark green lake water should be in the shape of a balloon. However, it was still unclear how big the foreign race was or what its true form looked like. After all, everything was covered by the dark green lake water. Even the Heaven Fire Doyen couldn't see what was in the lake water. 3 5th phase great ruler dark creatures flew out of the ancient Dragon Bone Tower. Each of them had the power of the prophet rank 9 nether divine characters and attacked the foreign race. These 3 dark creatures were from the fire god race when they were alive. At this moment, the prophet rank 9 nether divine characters condensed into a pillar of fire that instantly exploded on the surface of the foreign race's dark green lake water. A terrifying force erupted with a bang. However, it only blasted open the dark green lake water a little, and in next to no time, the figure of the outsider rose abruptly while the dark green lake water roiled and completely enveloped one of the creatures of darkness. The dark creature that was enveloped by the dark green lake water was quickly corroded by Longyu. Even a 5th phase great ruler dark creature was completely unable to resist the corrosion of the strange lake water. Chapter 1454. While the dark creature was being eroded by the dark green lake water, Longyu also sensed that the energy of the dark creature seemed to be completely absorbed by the evil alien. This situation confirmed Longyu's guess. This alien must have set up an ambush here and specifically devoured other human or demon cultivators that came here. I hope the old man and this alien isn't in a business relationship. Otherwise, it will be too disappointing. Longyu thought to himself, if it was being controlled, it would be excusable. After all, such a peak 7th stage dominator alien wasn't something that the old man could resist. However, if there was a business relationship, it was puzzling. They were all humans, but why would they set up an ambush for the alien and lure other human cultivators to be devoured by the alien? No matter what, Longyu had to stall this evil alien and let Heaven Fire Doyen by time to build the spirit array he wanted to build. As long as the spirit array was completed, he should be able to eliminate this alien completely. Longyu was confident in Heaven Fire Doyen in this aspect. However, even if he wasn't confident, he could only do it now. Anyway, if there was no other way, he could still use the 9 Hell Tablet. This was his final trump card. Dark Creature Attack. Longyu continued to command the next 2 dark creatures to attack the evil alien. Prophet level 9 Hell Divine characters constantly condensed into light pillars that bombarded the evil alien. However, they couldn't break through the layer of dark green lake water. In fact, Long Yu was now sure that the layer of dark green was not the lake water, but a defensive method that the alien had used. It was impossible to break through it. At least, it was impossible for Long Yu to do it alone. At this moment, Red Oriole's attack came from the side. The blood-colored whip that carried the power of the blood-colored divine characters descended from the sky. Countless whip shadows landed on the evil alien. Now, the blood-colored whip could not only destroy the physical body, but it could also attack the mental level. If it was successful, it might be able to destroy a part of the alien's mind. It could be said to be a huge blow to it. After all, it was a peak 7th-stage dominator. Even if its mental strength wasn't deliberately strengthened, it was still much stronger than ordinary cultivators. It wasn't easy to destroy its mind. This time, Red Oriole's attack was beyond the evil alien's expectations. When the blood-red whips descended on the evil alien's body, the mental tearing force instantly caused the alien to cry out in pain. The sound sounded like that of a bird, but it was sharper and hoarser than a bird's cry. Since it suffered the pain, it meant that the mental attack was effective on this alien. However, Red Oriole directly attracted the alien's attention. Then, the dark green lake water around the alien's body seemed to boil and churn. To Red Oriole. At this time, Long Yu didn't stay idle. He used the 4 symbols killing prison again. Since the mental attack was effective, the 4 symbols killing prison was clearly the most effective method. Countless lines of death appeared in midair and instantly wrapped around the evil alien. The aura of death continuously invaded its body. All of a sudden, Long Yu sensed that there seemed to be nothing within the dark green lake water. It was as if this alien was made entirely out of the dark green lake water. The death aura had seeped deep into the lake water, but there was still only the dark green lake water flowing and churning. There was no other physical existence within it. This situation made Long Yu's heart tremble. Why is this alien so strange? If the dark green lake water was its body, didn't that mean that this alien didn't have a solid form? This kind of life form was very strange. However, it wasn't impossible. It was very possible for a life form in a liquid state to exist. As long as one thought about the soul race, which had no form and was purely made up of mental energy, it wasn't difficult to accept that this life form was in a liquid state. Long Yu wasn't very clear about the specific situation. After all, the lines of death condensed by the 4 symbols killing prison couldn't allow the aura of death to invade the deepest part of the dark green lake water. As for whether there was anything else in it, he couldn't be sure. In any case, Long Yu only knew that when he used the 4 symbols killing prison, the alien seemed to be completely enraged. After suffering from Red Orioles and Long Yu's mental and spiritual attacks, this alien seemed to become extremely irritable. Hoarse and sharp cries sounded continuously. Then, the dark green lake water sprayed in all directions. Most of it was concentrated in the direction of Long Yu and Red Oriole. Dodge! Long Yu's reaction was extremely fast. He immediately dodged. The Nether Void Dragon Blade carried him rapidly to the vicinity of the Heaven Fire Doyen. Moonsong also used the 9 Firmament Star Flash and brought Red Oriole to the vicinity of the Heaven Fire Doyen. They were protected by the Heaven Fire Doyen's layer of flame barrier. You guys get out quickly. If the construction of the Spirit Array is interrupted, we're all doomed. When Heaven Fire Doyen saw this, he immediately shouted in exasperation and chased Long Yu and the 2 ladies out. One must know that if the 3 of them were to remain within the flame barrier, the attention of the alien race would definitely shift here. Long Yu curled his lips. He was so irritable just by dodging. Sigh, this old man isn't someone to be trifled with. However, even if he didn't hide in the flame barrier, he wasn't afraid of being killed. After all, he still had other means. Book of Shadows. Long Yu directly activated the congenital technique of the Book of Shadows. He then turned into nothingness and dashed out of the flame barrier. The dark green lake water instantly fell outside the space of nothingness. However, it couldn't break through the space of nothingness. Instead, it passed through the space of nothingness and couldn't touch Long Yu at all. Long Yu, who had turned into nothingness, could basically dodge any attack from his opponent. It was an impeccable defense. Unless he encountered an expert at the demigod level or an opponent with some special abilities, he wouldn't be able to be knocked out of the space of nothingness. So far, Long Yu had only been knocked out of the space of nothingness when he encountered a demigod of an alien race. At other times, as long as he turned into nothingness, he wouldn't be in any danger. Especially now, his congenital technique of the Book of Shadows had been fused with the essence of shadows and had undergone a transformation. The energy that he needed to turn into nothingness would mostly be provided by the essence of shadows. In other words, Long Yu could basically turn into nothingness for as long as he wanted. It wasn't like before, where he had to take elixirs to replenish his strength every once in a while. Long Yu left the protection of the heaven-fired Doyan's flame barrier. He turned into nothingness and directly charged into the dark green lake water that was pouring down. In the eyes of others, it was as if he had completely evaporated. He had completely disappeared from the scene. However, the evil alien race wasn't helpless. Instead, he immediately began to use his power of deduction to deduce Long Yu's location. After all, she was in existence at the peak of the 7th stage sovereign realm. Her deduction ability was much stronger than Red Oriole's. Long Yu felt a wave of deduction power descend upon his body. Immediately after, even if he transformed into nothingness, his whereabouts were still grasped by the other party. The other party's deduction speed was too fast. Long Yu didn't have any time to react. When the deduction power descended, Long Yu's whereabouts were exposed. The other party condensed a dark green light wave and suddenly descended from the sky. It was about to land on Long Yu's head. However, Long Yu didn't panic. He calmly stood in place, ready to move at any time. However, he soon saw the dark green light wave descend from the sky. It penetrated the nothingness where he was and directly landed on the ground of the oasis below. As expected, Long Yu was delighted in his heart. He was currently in a state of nothingness. So what if the other party had deduced his location? As long as he didn't shatter the nothingness, no attack could land on him. He was currently in a state of nothingness. The other party's attack directly passed through him and landed on the ground. In order to break through the void space, one needed to attack with purely spatial divine runes. I wonder if this evil alien has any knowledge in this aspect. In any case, Long Yu discovered a special characteristic of his state of nothingness. Even if the other party deduced his location, he didn't need to worry about the other party hurting him. The other party had to first shatter the nothingness. This gave Long Yu an additional layer of security in his current situation. It could even be said that Long Yu could now enter the body of the evil being and take a look. Because he was currently in a state of nothingness, there was no collision volume. He also didn't need to worry about the dark green lake water hurting him. However, Long Yu didn't act rashly. Instead, he cautiously moved around the periphery. He was afraid that the other party had some kind of powerful spatial divine rune attack. If it shattered the nothingness, he would be finished. The situation was still quite tense. He had to be careful. The evil being clearly didn't expect Long Yu to have such a method. It was truly disgusting. At first, it didn't believe it. It kept condensing dark green beams of light and bombarding Long Yu's position. It even changed its attack methods. All of them were condensed from the dark green, elemental divine runes. However, it couldn't hurt Long Yu at all. This situation made it extremely angry. Meanwhile, in the eyes of Moon Song and Red Oriole, the evil being seemed to have gone mad. It kept launching attacks at the empty space in the area. It seemed like it was going crazy. Long Yu's methods are too heaven-defying. Moon Song couldn't help but widen her eyes. Chapter 1455. After all, this was the most powerful technique that Long Yu currently possessed. After the Book of Shadows allowed him to transform into nothingness, it still had its own unique effects. However, the evil alien quickly realized the weakness of Long Yu's technique. He had to use spatial divine text attacks to shatter the nothingness and attack Long Yu. Otherwise, Long Yu was basically invincible in his current state. Even a demigod expert wouldn't be able to do anything to Long Yu, let alone the evil alien. He had to use spatial divine text or water-type primordial power to shatter the nothingness that Long Yu was in. Water-type primordial power was at least a spatial divine text. Every cultivator had to comprehend it. Otherwise, it would be very inconvenient to move around in such a large world. The fact that this evil alien could come to the human territory from an unknown distance and hide here meant that he had naturally comprehended very powerful spatial divine text. When the evil alien discovered that his divine abilities had no effect on Long Yu, he finally realized that he had to use spatial divine characters to attack. As such, he infused some of his innate divine abilities with the power of spatial divine characters. The power of the dark green, lake-like, divine text condensed together. It was mixed with spatial divine text and transformed into a blade light that descended from the sky towards Long Yu. Long Yu immediately dodged to the side when he saw this. Although he was in a state of nothingness, he could still use the nothingness to move around. Although his speed wasn't that fast, it wasn't a problem for him to dodge the dark green blade light. Moonsong and Red Oriole watched the show from below while the Heavenfire Doyen continued to construct the formation. The evil alien that was at the level of a 7th phase Great Ruler was actually stalled by Long Yu for a while. In reality, if the evil alien ignored Long Yu wouldn't be able to do anything to it. After all, Long Yu's martial realm was too low. Although he could transform into nothingness, it was impossible for him to deal with the evil alien. However, the evil alien didn't believe it. It seemed like it was really going to fight with Long Yu and wouldn't stop until Long Yu was killed. This gave the Heavenfire Doyen more time to construct the formation. As long as the formation was completed, he would definitely be able to make a decisive breakthrough in the battle. Even if he couldn't kill the evil alien in one go, it would still give Long Yu and the others a huge advantage. Long Yu transformed into nothingness and moved around the battlefield. He dodged the dark green blade light that contained the power of the spatial divine runes. Soon, he was forced into a corner. Dark green blade light began to close in on him from all directions. Although he was in a state of nothingness, the blade light contained the power of the spatial divine runes. Once he touched it, it was very likely that the nothingness would shatter. When that happened, he would be forced out of the state of nothingness, and his life would be in danger. No matter what, Long Yu couldn't just sit and wait for death. He chose a direction with the least amount of dark green blade light. Then, with a flash, he moved in that direction with the nothingness. He instantly collided with several dark green blade lights. However, these few dark green blade lights weren't enough to shatter the entire nothingness. They could only make the nothingness a little weaker. If he wanted to shatter the nothingness, he needed more dark green blade lights to deal with it. With great difficulty, Long Yu managed to escape from the encirclement of the dark green saber lights. That evil alien immediately condensed even more dark green saber lights and flew towards Long Yu to attack him from all sides. It seemed as though it would not rest until Long Yu was dead. Long Yu was facing considerable pressure. As the dark green blade lights increased in number, it became more and more difficult for him to break out of the encirclement. Even the entire nothingness was in danger. If the nothingness was shattered, then Long Yu's entire body would leave the state of nothingness. It was easy to imagine what would happen next. Other than turning into nothingness and hiding in the 9 Underworld prison tablet, Long Yu had no other way to resist the attack of a 7th rank Dominator expert. Moreover, this evil alien's overall strength was considered top-notch among 7th rank Dominator experts. It was even more impossible for Long Yu to resist it. Fortunately, at this time, the Heavenfire Doyen's array was finally about to be completed. Hold on a little more. Even though Long Yu had turned into nothingness, he could still feel the increasingly powerful energy condensing within the spirit array below him. Naturally, this energy was also sensed by the evil outsider. Originally, among this group of people, the Heaven Fire Doyen was the most attention-grabbing. After all, he was a 7th-rank dominator existence. That evil alien initially only thought that this group of people was a meal on a platter and didn't care much about the order. But now, it seemed that this human brat, Long Yu, only knew how to run. Instead, it was that 7th-rank dominator old man who was a threat to the evil alien. The evil alien finally knew who to deal with first. The dark green saber light that was originally condensing towards Long Yu instantly changed its target. It poured down towards where the Heaven Fire Doyen was. The dark green lake water rolled up like a waterfall that covered the sky. It enveloped the flame barrier around the Heaven Fire Doyen. Originally, this evil alien didn't attack the flame barrier around the Heaven Fire Doyen with full force. Therefore, it wasn't able to shatter it. But now, the dark green lake water accompanied by the saber light nearly enveloped the entire flame barrier. Its aura and power were extremely shocking. The strange dark green divine character power quickly landed on the flaming barrier and began to resist the power of the divine character on the flaming barrier. Although the Heaven Fire Doyen ignored it, the strength of the flaming barrier he had condensed was extremely high. It was impossible for it to be shattered so easily. 9 Underworld Sphere, bind for me. At this moment, Long Yu was free. Seeing that the evil alien was actually ignoring him, he broke away and recovered from the state of nothingness. Then he executed his 8th mystique, 9 Underworld Sphere, at the evil alien. This Khanate mystique was Long Yu's 8th Khanate mystique. It was a new mystique that the 9 Underworld tablet had condensed in Long Yu's small world after it had devoured the remnant power of the 9 Underworld realm. He hadn't used it much. Long Yu only knew that this 9 Underworld Sphere could increase its power by devouring the alien. However, the efficiency of the increase wasn't high. Therefore, he hadn't paid much attention to it. But now, when Long Yu used the 9 Underworld Sphere, he discovered that the countless 9 Underworld light beams in the 9 Underworld Sphere could actually restrain the evil alien's actions. Under the influence of the Ball of the Netherworld, the speed at which the evil being condensed the power of the divine characters and unleashed his innate abilities instantly slowed down to only half of his original speed. This situation was out of Long Yu's expectations. Previously, he had only used the 9 Underworld Sphere to deal with weak foreign races, and the effects were mediocre. He didn't expect that it would have such an effect on a 7th-stage Sovereign Realm Peak foreign race. Looks like the binding effect of the 9 Hell Ball isn't weakened by too much because the opponent's strength is too strong. It's actually so heaven-defying. Long Yu was extremely pleasantly surprised by this. In this way, merely by relying on the 9th Hell Sphere, he would be able to display an extremely great effect in an extremely high-level Xenorace battlefield. In a battle between experts, a 9th Hell Sphere that coiled around a beam of light was condensed and coiled around the body of the opponent, directly having the circulation speed of the energy within the opponent's body. This sort of effect was simply heaven-defying. At this moment, the evil being that was affected by the 9 Underworld Sphere really wanted to destroy the 9 Underworld Sphere. The pitch-black sphere that was constantly emitting the 9 Underworld Sphere like a black hole floated in midair, severely restricting the evil being's movements. As a result, the pressure on the flame barrier around the Heaven Fire Doyen was reduced by half, allowing Moonsong and Red Oriole to heave a sigh of relief. The two women raised their heads and discovered that it was actually Long Yu restraining the 7th-stage peak Sovereign Realm evil being. They couldn't help but feel a little fascinated. The two women's martial Dao realm was clearly higher than Long Yu's, but why couldn't they be of much help in this battle? Could it be because Long Yu was simply too strong? Red Oriole didn't think too much about it. She also didn't want to just stand there and watch the show. However, given the current situation, there really wasn't any need for her to go over and help the Heaven Fire Doyen stall for a little longer. Moonsong was the same. She didn't have any thoughts of going out to fight against the evil being. After all, she wasn't Long Yu, who possessed such tyrannical, life-saving methods. Under the condition of transforming into nothingness, no one's life-saving abilities could compare to Long Yu's. The appearance of the 9 underworld sphere delayed the evil being's attack for a period of time. Then, the Heaven Fire Doyen's formation was finally about to be completed. Of course, the evil being was disgusted by Long Yu's 9 underworld sphere. However, if it were to turn around and attack Long Yu, then the formation below would definitely not be able to stop it. Therefore, it didn't hesitate. Its body glowed with a dark green luster, and a power that resembled a pure body flickered from its body. It actually removed all the light beams from the 9 underworld sphere. Although the 9 underworld sphere could continue to entangle it and slow it down, at this moment, countless dark green lake water descended from the sky. Even the evil being's body fell downwards. One look, and it was obvious that it was trying its best to stop the Heaven Fire Doyen from completing the formation. Now, the formation was basically completed. The aura it emitted was enough to make the evil being feel threatened. Under such circumstances, the evil being couldn't be bothered with Long Yu. Destroying the formation was the most important thing. Otherwise, even if the evil being managed to kill Long Yu, he would definitely die within the array. This was a choice that the evil being would make no matter what. No matter what, he would prioritize preserving his own life over anything else. Chapter 1456. The evil alien continued to attack the flame barrier that the Heaven Fire Doyen was in. Countless droplets of dark green lake water fell from the sky and landed on the flame barrier. As a result, the flame barrier finally began to loosen. Once it started to loosen, it entered a state of continuous disintegration. When Moonsong and Red Oriole saw this, they each used their own means. The power of the blood-color divine characters and the starry divine characters constructed several layers of defensive barriers that blocked the flame barrier. When the flame barrier shattered, the barrier formed by the power of the blood-color divine characters and the starry divine characters was attacked by the dark green lake water. Basically, each layer of defensive barrier could not last more than a breath's time. This was because the evil alien's attack power was not something that the two women could withstand. Regardless, the power of the two women's divine characters managed to resist for a while. During this short period of time, the Heaven Fire Doyen spirit formation was finally completed. Fire Dragon spirit formation, activate. The Heaven Fire Doyen's eyes were filled with concentration. The power of the fiery divine characters in his body seemed to have been extracted and injected into the spirit formation in front of him. Immediately after, a fire dragon emerged from the spirit formation. It opened its huge mouth and swallowed the dark green lake water that was pouring down. Then, it used the power of the endless fiery divine characters to evaporate the dark green lake water. At the same time, an unstoppable aura was released from the fire dragon. The fire dragon soared into the sky and instantly charged in the direction of the evil alien. In order to prevent the spirit formation from completing, the evil alien had descended a little. Now, he happened to be in the path of the fire dragon's ascension and was swallowed by the fire dragon. In the next moment, the fire dragon and the dark green evil alien were completely entangled. Long was high up in the sky. In order to ensure his own safety, he could only transform into nothingness once more. From time to time, violent flame-type divine runes and dark green elemental divine runes would float past his body, but they were unable to harm him. If he hadn't transformed into nothingness, the power of these divine runes would have completely destroyed him. Long Yu turned into nothingness and avoided the intense battle between the two parties. After the Heaven Fire Doyen completed the spirit array below, he raised his hand again to condense a layer of flame barrier. Finally, he was able to avoid being affected by the battle between the fire dragons and the evil alien race. I'm afraid that the fire dragon head formation alone won't be able to kill this alien race. However, it should be able to heavily injure it. Next, if you have any techniques that can attack the mind, feel free to use them. If you can cooperate with me, we can completely destroy it." After saying that, Heaven Fire Doyen consumed a primordial elixir pill to recover his strength. Then, he began to condense the power of the Fire Divine runes in his hands once more. The power of the Fire Divine runes he condensed was of course the source-level Fire Divine runes, a power that he had completely comprehended from the source of Divine runes. Although it couldn't compare with the power of a Revelation-level Divine rune, it was still extremely fierce when used in his hands. Moreover, the Heaven Fire Doyen had comprehended 3 types of Origin Source Flame Divine characters. At this moment, the 3 types of Fire Divine characters had completely fused together to form an even more powerful fusion Divine character. The power of such a Divine character was much stronger than that of the Origin Source Flame Divine characters. However, compared to a Revelation-level Divine character, it was still much weaker. However, to an ordinary person, such a fusion Divine character was already the strongest Divine character power they could possess. Even someone as powerful as the Heaven Fire Doyen, who had mastered 4 types of Fire Divine characters, would need to spend an unknown amount of time to fuse the power of the 4th type of Fire Divine character. After all, even if different types of Divine characters were of the same attribute, there would still be some repulsion between them. Fusing several types of Divine characters together was a very difficult task to begin with. Fusing the power of 3 types of Divine characters of the same attribute was already the limit of an ordinary person. Its power was basically 3 to 5 times that of a single Divine character. Compared to a Revelation-level Divine character, it could reach about half the power of a Revelation-level Divine character. If some high-quality 4 types of Divine characters were fused together, its power would most likely reach the level of a Revelation-level Divine character. Unfortunately, it was impossible for an ordinary person to do so. In fact, fusing 4 types of Divine characters together was even more difficult than finding Revelation-level Divine characters to comprehend. At this moment, the Heaven Fire Doyen had fused the power of 3 types of Fire Divine characters. Immediately after, he released his innate ability. A light pillar of Fire Divine characters burst out from his hand. It instantly broke through the void and landed on the body of the evil alien. At this moment, the evil alien was still fighting with the fire dragon formed by the fire dragon head array. Caught off guard by the Heaven Fire Doyen's attack, the dark green lake water on its body evaporated by a small portion. Its strength seemed to have suffered quite a bit of damage from the blood sword. The light pillar of Fire Divine characters was only a one-time attack from the Heaven Fire Doyen's innate ability. However, the Fire Dragon head array was different. After the formation formed the Fire Dragon, it immediately dissipated. It was obvious that it was impossible to form a second Fire Dragon. However, this Fire Dragon was like a living Fire Dragon. It had its own combat awareness and its own combat style. It was similar to a summoned creature. Long you could feel that the strength of this Fire Dragon was definitely stronger than the Heaven Fire Doyen. In fact, it was quite a bit stronger. Only such an existence could face a peak 7th stage Sovereign Realm evil alien head-on. Both sides exchanged blows. The power of Divine characters constantly poured down in midair. The battle was extremely intense. Long Yu turned into nothingness and hid. He wasn't a cowardly tortoise. From time to time, he would form desolate afterimages and use the 4 symbols killing prison on the evil alien. The 4 symbols death prison was an ancient god-forbidden technique that could deal damage to one psyche. Long Yu's desolate primordial shadow only needed to use the 4 symbols death prison once before it would dissipate. But even if he only condensed 10 lines of death, it would still be able to deal quite a huge blow to the psyche and soul of the foreign races. Below, Red Oriole didn't relax. She cooperated with the Heaven Fire Doyen's attacks and formed blood-colored whips. The whips landed on the evil alien's body and constantly pressured its mind and soul. Under the constant attacks from all directions, the evil alien was forced to retreat. Even the Fire Dragon couldn't suppress it under the harassment of the mental attacks. Gradually, The fiery light on the fire dragon's body became more and more vigorous. There were even some terrifying flame whirlpools that engulfed the dark green lake divine characters around the evil alien and incinerated them completely. The evil alien's body seemed to become smaller and smaller. The dark green divine characters around it were constantly evaporating. Hoarse cries rang out continuously from the mouth of that evil being. Clearly, it was unable to hold on any longer. If it had any killing moves, it should have used them by now. Otherwise, it could only flee. After all, death was the only outcome for it at this rate. Just as Long Yu was thinking about this, the evil alien's body suddenly flew towards the lake below. It was obvious that it was trying to escape. As for why it was escaping towards the lake below, it was easy to imagine that there was some sort of trap in the lake. If Long Yu and the others chased it into the lake to deal with the evil alien, they would definitely fall into the trap. The consequences would be very bad. Seeing that the evil alien was about to fall into the lake, the Heaven Fire Doyen waved his hand. There's no need to chase it. Since this beast has escaped into the lake, it's seeking its own death. Little brat, I remember that you're able to display a kind of absolute space domain, then display it, and completely seal off this nearby space. All right, Long Yu did not hesitate. The ancient dragon bone tower appeared in his hand. Then, the absolute space domain spread out and appeared within the dark green barrier around them. Although the evil alien was very strong, Long Yu was sure that if it wanted to escape from the range of his absolute space domain, it would need at least 5 minutes to destroy the absolute space domain. This was his confidence in himself and his trust in the ancient dragon bone tower. After all, it was an unparalleled combat weapon. Moreover, it was an unparalleled combat weapon that was compatible with Long Yu. When the absolute space domain was used, it could even trap a demigod expert for a moment. The fire dragon condensed by the fire dragon head array followed the evil alien into the dark green lake. In an instant, the whole lake boiled. Then, a wave of evil aura was emitted from the lake, and the fire in the lake was gradually suppressed. It could be seen that there was indeed some kind of array trap in the lake. If Long Yu, the Heaven Fire Doyen, and the others followed the evil alien into the lake, they would definitely die. Since the Heaven Fire Doyen had told them not to chase after it, he must have his own way. That bastard is dead for sure. The Heaven Fire Doyen sneered. I wonder what kind of alien race it is to be hiding in the human territory. I wonder what's going on with the human cultivators on this planet. Once we're done with this alien race, we'll have to investigate. The Heaven Fire Doyen had a deep hatred for alien races. Therefore, he could not remain indifferent to this situation. Now that the evil alien was hiding in the lake, it was trying to lure them into the lake. Unfortunately, they would not fall for it. Long Yu used the absolute space domain to seal off the surrounding space. Then, the Heaven Fire Doyen began to set up a formation beside the lake. This was the Heaven Fire Doyen's specialty. The Fire Dragon Head formation had cooperated with the group's attack and harassment to force the evil alien back into the lake. Now, the Heaven Fire Doyen had set up a killing formation beside the lake. Where would the evil alien escape to? As for Long Yu, Red Oriole, and Moon Song, they could finally rest for a while. The alien had just escaped and would probably need some time to rest. There was no way it would come out so soon. Chapter 1457. Long Yu, Red Oriole, and Moon Song rested by the lake. At the same time, they did not let down their guard. They were constantly on guard against the appearance of the evil alien. As for Heaven Fire Doyen, he started to set up a spirit array by the side of the lake. Compared to the previous Fire Dragon spirit array, this spirit array was a true killing spirit array. Once the Prairie Nine Flames spirit array was activated, it could turn everything within the range of the spirit array into ashes. Now, the range of the formation that the Heaven Fire Doyen had set up was around the lake. Once it was activated, the entire lake would be incinerated. The Heaven Fire Doyen's element was extremely compatible with the Fire Attribute Divine Text. In fact, it had already reached the peak of level 12 compatibility. Hence, most of the formations that he had mastered were activated by the fire tribute divine text. Only then could they unleash their greatest power. The evil alien was entangled by the fire dragon, summoned by the fire dragon head formation, and could not get up for a moment. Even though it had returned to its lair, the fire dragon summoned by the fire dragon head formation could still continue fighting for a while. In addition, Long Yu and Red Oriole had used a technique to destroy the evil alien's mind and soul. This prevented the evil alien from fighting for a moment. Even if it managed to escape, it would not be a match for the Heavenfire Doyen. Hence, the situation had basically stabilized. There would not be any danger for the time being, unless there was a danger other than the evil alien. However, the most powerful being on this planet was the evil alien. Even if other human cultivators had made some sort of deal with it, it would not be a threat to Long Yu and the others. After all, the human cultivators on this planet were just too weak. The formation that the Heavenfire Doyen had set up gradually took shape. The power of fire constantly surged around the lake, and the extremely high temperature caused the dark green water in the lake to bubble and boil. And this was only the beginning. The Prairie 9 Flames formation had 9 fire tribute divine texts that formed the formation's core. Each core could release an endless amount of fire tribute divine text power. The powerful fire tribute divine text burned everything within the formation's range into ashes. As time passed, the Prairie 9 Flames formation's power began to manifest. The temperature in the entire oasis had basically risen to an extremely high level. The dark green lake water had already boiled completely, and even the air in midair showed signs of spatial distortion. The evil alien hiding at the bottom of the lake naturally knew that the situation was bad. However, it had not fully recovered and did not dare to come out. After a while, the evil alien finally could not endure it any longer. It flew out from the boiling lake water. It was still enveloped by the dark green lake water, and its true form was completely unknown. It could be seen that the evil being wanted to destroy the 9 Flames Prairie Fire formation the moment it appeared. However, at this moment, the Heavenfire Doyen could already use the power of the formation to deal with the evil being. No matter which formation core of the 9 Prairie Blazing Flames formation the evil alien race wanted to destroy, Heavenfire Doyen could easily borrow the formation's power and fuse it with his own power to force the evil alien race back, preventing it from attacking the formation core of the formation. Unless the evil alien wanted to destroy the formation's core, the Heavenfire Doyen could easily borrow the formation's power and fuse it with his own power to force the evil alien to retreat, preventing it from attacking the formation's core. The evil alien wanted to destroy the formation even if it risked being seriously injured. However, it was not the final moment yet. The evil alien would not cut off all means of retreat. Following that, Long Yu, Red Oriole, and Moonsong were basically watching the show. I really didn't expect such an evil alien race to be hiding in this place. Later, I must figure out the relationship between the human race cultivators on this planet and this alien race. Long Yu was rather puzzled. After all, this was the human territory. He did not expect to encounter such a thing. If it wasn't for the Heavenfire Doyen, they wouldn't be able to survive unless they used the 9 Underworlds prison tablet. Even if they used the 9 Underworlds prison tablet, they might not be able to kill that evil alien. After all, it was a peak 7th-stage Sovereign Realm expert. It might not attack the 9 Underworlds prison tablet. If that was the case, the 9 Underworlds prison tablet wouldn't explode and wouldn't be able to injure that alien. Actually, it would be best if we could capture this alien alive. We could bring it back to the Demigod College and get a lot of rewards. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to capture it alive. Even if we killed it, we had to borrow the Heavenfire Doyen's power. Moonsong shook her head regretfully. She clearly knew what an unknown alien meant to the human and demon races. Although the main enemies of the human race and the demon race were the Outer God race, the Soul race, and the Abyss race, other alien races existed widely in this world. They were just far away from the human race and the demon race. No one could guarantee that the human and demon races would not have relations with other alien races in the future. Most of these relations would be hostile. As for the mysterious alien race that had formed an alliance with the human and demon races, no one except the real big shots of the two races would know about it. Even someone at the level of the Heavenfire Doyen would not know such secret information. Only the students of the Demigod College vaguely knew that there was an alien race forming an alliance with the human and demon races. However, they did not know what kind of alien race it was. The battle between the Heavenfire Doyen and the evil alien race soon became white-hot. It was obvious that the alien race wanted to destroy the array and kill the Heavenfire Doyen. Unfortunately, the Heavenfire Doyen had many tricks up his sleeves. After the evil member of the foreign race had suffered serious injuries previously, the Heavenfire Doyen was no longer weaker than the foreign race member. Furthermore, with the help of the Nine Flames Prairie Formation, he was like a fish in water and did not show any signs of weakness. On the other hand, the foreign race being's situation was worsening. Its spirit seemed to be growing more and more dispirited. After all, it wasn't that easy to recover from a spirit injury. Long Yu and Red Oriole's combined attacks had caused the foreign race being's spirit to suffer significant damage. 2 hours, 4 hours, the battle between the two parties became more and more intense. After all, the evil alien race felt that it was more likely that it would die here. However, there was no point in risking its life at this time. After 4 hours, the Nine Flames Prairie Blazing Array was finally completed. The Eye of the Formation, formed from 9 Fire Divine characters, exploded with the terrifying power of Blaze Divine characters at this moment. It enveloped the entire space, including the lake. The terrifying temperature instantly rose. Long Yu and the other two who were watching the battle from afar felt an extremely high heat wave. The heat wave almost burned the air completely. It was needless to imagine how terrible the situation in the middle of the formation was. At that very moment, Heavenfire Elder had already appeared outside the 9 Fires Prairie Formation. As for the malevolent alien race being, it was trapped in the lake and completely enveloped by the 9 Fires Prairie Formation. The evil, eerie, and mournful cries continuously came from the lake. However, the alien race could not escape its pain through its cries. It's really difficult to deal with. This alien race has never appeared before. It's definitely a new breed for humans and demons. The Heavenfire Doyen retreated to the side of Long Yu and the other two. He shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that we can only kill it now and not capture it alive. Otherwise, its research value would be extremely high. Even if it's just a corpse, it has a certain research value, Moonsong said. Moonsong said, it's a pity that under the 9 Flames Prairie Formation, everything within it will be reduced to ashes. Not even a corpse will remain. We don't even know what the original form of this alien race is. Heavenfire Doyen shook his head regretfully. This situation was a little awkward. They had fought with this alien race for so long, but in the end, they didn't even know what it looked like. That was too much of a pity. However, that alien race being was completely covered by the dark green lake water. They really had no way of seeing that alien race being's true appearance. If the 9 Flames Prairie Fire Formation really turned everything into ashes, then there was nothing they could do. In any case, it was impossible for them to capture that foreign being alive. If they could kill it, they could only do so. What Long Yu and the others didn't know was that at this moment, there was a group of people outside the oasis that couldn't hold back anymore. This group of people were the people from the city that had lured Long Yu and the others into the oasis. They were all wrapped in cloth strips and led by the elder as they waited for something outside the oasis. In front of them was a layer of dark green divine text barrier. They had no idea what was happening in the oasis behind the barrier. Clearly, there was a reason why this group of people had lured Long Yu and the others into the oasis. However, they would probably only know what was going on after Long Yu and the others came out and interrogated them. Furthermore, they could probably only find out what was going on with that alien race being from these people. Now, this group of people were filled with sincerity as they looked towards the direction of the oasis. Unfortunately, they didn't know that the evil alien that they revered was currently in a very bad situation. In fact, it was about to be killed by Long Yu and the Heavenfire Doyen. These people didn't know about the Heavenfire Doyen's existence at all. They felt that it was impossible for Long Yu, Moon Song, and Red Oriole to escape from the alien race. However, the reality would definitely exceed their expectations, of course. The leading elder had already sensed that something was wrong. After all, under normal circumstances, it would have been over by now. It was impossible for the dark green barrier to still exist. Could it be that there was an accident? Of course, he didn't expect the accident to be so huge. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.